Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Marvel Bounty Hunter. Chapter 91. Thor, Vostag, Fandral, Hogun, and Sif looked ugly. Especially the four of Vostag. They came to the earth through Bifrost. The scene in front of them is very familiar, and it is Bifrost that was opened just now. The dust in the sky gradually dissipated, and the figure of the destroyer gradually appeared in front of everyone. He was about 3 meters tall, and his armor was striped, with red light shining inside, leaving only 2 small holes in the eyes. Silver white, the cold metal shone in the moonlight, making one's heart palpitate. It's just that it didn't make any movement, it just stood there rigidly. What is this? Mrs. Gao frowned. Looking at the 3-meter-high robot in front of her, she suddenly felt bad. This is especially true for the four of Vostag and Thor. As Asgard fighters, how could they not recognize what the robot in front of them is? It is Odin's ultimate weapon, the Destroyer. Could it be that Loki sent them to capture them when he found out they were coming down to find Thor? Take this opportunity and go. Madame Gao looked around at the few people whose eyes were completely focused on the Destroyer, and immediately made this decision. A 1-4 fight might be able to win, but it would definitely be a tragic victory. If it was not necessary, she would never let herself fall into the realm of injury. Therefore, once she has a chance to leave the battle, she will definitely not have the slightest hesitation. However, she just moved her feet. The Destroyer, who stood quietly there, suddenly moved, as if awakened, and the striped face shone with red light, which intensified, just like the extremely hot magma. Boom! Sound. An incomparably hot magma-like beam of golden light gushed out from those eyes, appearing extremely bright in the night. Oops! Carrying magma of unmatched momentum, it came towards several people. Vostage and the others exclaimed, and immediately hid in embarrassment around them. Including Mrs. Gao. She never expected that a small action of hers would cause such a terrifying reaction, and she ran away with them while being horrified in her heart. Pong! 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 The magma hit the container in front of it directly, and wherever it passed, the high temperature up to an unknown degree instantly vaporized the container, and the surrounding containers that were not exposed to the magma also had a faint tendency to melt. Su Zicheng sat on the top of warehouse number 3, shaking his head. The Destroyer is worthy of being the ultimate weapon. It can kill people without distinction. You can't sit still. Go together. Get rid of this guy. Sif was also woken up because of such a big movement. During the time when he was just unconscious, his injuries had already recovered 7 or 88. Destroyer, Sif exclaimed, picked up the long sword, and quickly looked towards the other 3. The Vosta people looked at her, and they all picked up their weapons. Let's go together. Just as they were talking, another beam of magma, which seemed to be enough to destroy everything, was launched and hit the ground, exploding again and again. Bang bang bang. The Destroyer is a robot that was ordered to kill these guys in front of him. The attacks naturally followed. With heavy steps, the red light inside the machine's body is condensing, and the even more terrifying magma beam is still accumulating terrifying power. Vostag and the others are facing the Destroyer. As for Mrs. Gao, she had already taken advantage of the chaos and fled. Su Zicheng didn't bother to take care of her either. This old lady might be useful to him in the future. What's more, tonight we only watch the show, and we don't play in person. Glancing at Jiali, who was watching with relish, Su Zicheng smiled, and continued to cast his gaze on the battlefield not far away. Quote exclamation mark quote. Boom, boom. Vostag still used that trick, using his own weight, strength, and speed when falling, to hit the Destroyer's shoulder with an axe. The Destroyer didn't seem to react, and was hit hard. However, it didn't seem to be hurt at all. There was only a white mark on the shoulder where it was hit, not even a dent. One can imagine why it is called the ultimate weapon. The Destroyer slowly turned his head to Vostag, meeting his gaze. A strong red light entered his eyes. Vostag's pupils shrank suddenly. He gave up the axe directly, and fell straight to the ground. And the moment he just let go of the axe, a red light that could destroy everything shot out, instantly melting the axe made by the blacksmith of Asgard. Wherever it passed, there was a sound of explosion, and everything melted. Vostag was unable to attack, but the other 3 were not vegetarians either. At the same time, they brandished their swords and roared to meet the Destroyer. Thor, who was hiding aside, looked anxiously at the battle ahead. How to do. Is there no other way? Hammer, why can't I pick up the hammer? If I could pick up a hammer, I wouldn't just watch from the sidelines. Thor looked anxious, and he blamed himself in his heart for not being able to pick up the hammer, resenting his own weakness. Frowning, he scratched his head like an ordinary person, and turned around. His handsome hairstyle was scratched into a chicken coop and became sloppy. However, just because of this act of scratching his head, he saw two people. Su Zicheng and Jiali sitting on top of warehouse No. 3, Jiao La Jiao. Thor suddenly looked happy, and waved his hands below and shouted, "Hey! Hey! Hey! Okay, is Thor this guy's brain burned out?" Su Zicheng turned his mentally retarded eyes to Thor. Sensing that Su Zicheng was already looking at him, Thor waved his hands frantically, gesturing to the battlefield ahead. "Aren't you a bounty hunter who specializes in helping others complete tasks? I have a task for you now. Kill that robot, please." In the information that Nick Fury handed over to Thor, except for Su Zicheng's ability information, everything else is available. He even told Thor that Su Zicheng is a bounty hunter, and told Thor that this person is from Mjolnir stolen after completing the mission. Thor never imagined that there would be a day when he would ask someone else. However, he knows what kind of existence the Destroyer is, and he must put down his figure. Don't look at the fact that Vostag and the others are still fighting back and forth with the Destroyer, but in fact it's just that the Destroyer didn't use all its strength. Thor, the son of Odin, knows very well how terrible the Destroyer, known as the ultimate weapon, is. Not to mention anything else, the armor on it was forged by the strongest blacksmith in Asgard after a long time, which is enough to easily block the attacks of almost all Asgard weapons. Like Vostag's blow just now, it looks powerful, but in fact it didn't cause any damage to it at all, and even melted Vostag's axe with a backhand. Maybe it's nothing to Thor with a hammer, but he's just an ordinary Thor now. The strength of the three warriors of Asgard and Sif has not reached a great level, but if they face the Destroyer, they will lose very easily. There is no chance of resistance at all. Therefore, even though he has the arrogance of being Thor in his heart, Thor still wants to put down his figure and at least save his friends. He has never seen the strength of Su Zicheng, a bounty hunter, so he will not guess. But if he has a good relationship with the little girl beside him, then it will be enough to deal with the Destroyer. The little girl's strength is terrifying. If the Destroyer can make him feel the limit of strength, then this little girl, Thor only feels like an abyss, bottomless, and dare not feel too much. During the conversation, on the other side, the battle between the Destroyer and the four warriors of Asgard has come to an end, just as Thor expected. Vostag's huge body and weight are like nothing to the Destroyer, and Vostag hit the Destroyer with one blow, but did not cause any damage. The Destroyer didn't continue to send out magma beams, because the casting swing was too big, and it was easy to be dodged. So he slapped Vostag hard on the abdomen. The weight Vostag is so proud of didn't help. Vostag, Fandral, Hogun, and Sif were about to burst into tears, and roared angrily. They couldn't go forward to help Vostag up, because the Destroyer was already striding towards them, and the red light had already condensed. Like a laser ray, Sia. Nourishing. Boom. The red light strafed, and everything that hit the ground was vaporized by the terrifying high temperature, and the sound of explosions was like thunder in the ears. "Get out of the way." Fandral roared, and rolled around like a lazy donkey at the same time as Hogun and Sif. The dust on the ground stained their armor and faces, and they looked extremely embarrassed. Panting heavily, the three of them looked at the Destroyer viciously. Bang, bang, bang. The Destroyer trembled with every step, just like the dying bell. Vostag forcibly suppressed the urge to vomit a mouthful of blood, stood up and united with the three, and continued to fight against the Destroyer. The four of them were exhausted. It was different when fighting Madame Gao. They used all their strength in every blow just now, using as much force as they could, without causing any damage to the Destroyer, but in just a few tens of seconds, they were already close to the level of physical victory. It's a long story, but the battle started only a minute ago. Please. Thor became more anxious, looking at Thor's truthful eyes below. The corner of Su Zicheng's mouth twitched, with an idiot expression on his face. "You want to hire me?" Yes. Thor nodded repeatedly. "Then I'll ask you a question. Su Zicheng glanced at Thor, who looked poor and dying. Are you rich? The cost of my attack will not be more than 100 million. If I want to deal with this destroyer, I might provoke the people behind me, so the price will only go higher. If he has money, he might make a move. Well, what? You said I just said that I only watch movies and don't get involved. If you have money, why don't you earn it? As long as you have money, everything is on my side, Wei Fuyun. However, the fact is that Thor has no money. Su Zicheng will not do business at a loss, he just has no feelings. Besides, he didn't mean to be sarcastic, but just stated a fact. However, it was precisely because it was just stating a fact that it made Thor feel ashamed and flustered. He really has no money. Thor, the son of the king of god Odin in northern Europe. How could one day be blocked by the money in the earth world? Well, can I get credit first? Thor suppressed the feeling of embarrassment and panic in his heart, and continued to ask anxiously, my friends will soon be unable to hold on. Sorry, I don't accept credit. You have opened up this issue. Su Zicheng shook his head, playing tricks on Jiali's small head with his big hands, playing with her hair. I have to say that the baby's hair is inexplicably fun. For this, Jiali could only snort arrogantly and roll her eyes at Su Zicheng. Thor clenched his fists. He didn't mean to blame Su Zicheng. He was just resenting why he was so weak and why he was so experienced. If he could have picked up Mjolnir, he wouldn't have ended up here, with his pals fighting ahead while he watched from behind. Ah! 4 screams sounded. Vostag, Fandral, Hogan, and Sif finally couldn't hold on anymore, and flew upside down one after another. They were all blasted by the destroyer to not far behind Thor, and fell to the ground powerlessly like sacks. These screams also brought Thor back to reality from self-blame again. A trace of cruelty flashed in his eyes. Instead of begging Su Zicheng again, he clenched his fists and ran towards the place where the 4 Asgard warriors were blown away. Vostag and the others had just helped each other up at this time, looked at Thor who was running, and hurriedly said, Thor, run, this is not something you can mix in now, and the destroyer is probably coming for you. Looking at the 4 good friends in front of him who were bruised all over because of him, but did not regret it at all. The 4 of them should have been warriors in Asgard, invincible. A trace of guilt flashed in Thor's eyes, and the thoughts in his heart just now became more firm. My friends, I can't let you do this for me anymore. You guys cultivate well here, let me face it, this is what I have to do. Thor, I get it. The scenes of his friends fighting for themselves flashed through his mind, and Jane never left him during this time. Thor, who was extremely arrogant and never thought about others, finally realized. Run, I'll stop him. So, he stopped the 4 Asgard warriors who were already covered in bruises, and walked in front of the destroyer himself. He stared at the terrifying destroyer in front of him. Losing his power, he tried to block the destroyer with his own power. The 4 Asgard warriors supported each other, looked at Thor's back, and vaguely felt that their good brother Thor seemed to be a little different. However, Thor is a model of courage but not strategy. At present, he is just a mortal, and he is not an existence of the same magnitude as the destroyer at all. As the ultimate weapon of Asgard, the destroyer is just a backhand punch, sending you flying backwards for several meters. Su Zicheng sits on warehouse no. 3. The expression gradually became a little strange. Why does this plot feel familiar? Isn't it the plot that appeared in Thor 1? Although some ordinary people and Jane were missing, the 4 warriors of Asgard were also bruised by the destroyer, and Thor stepped forward to try to hold the destroyer. Although my little butterfly appeared, but because I didn't get involved too much, the plot was fully back on track. Su Zicheng scratched his head. The 4 Asgard warriors next to him exclaimed when they saw Thor being punched flying, and wanted to go forward to catch him. It is impossible for Thor, who is just an ordinary person now, to withstand this punch, and the result of being punched firmly is that his internal organs were shattered and died. However, they have not run a few steps forward. I felt an incomparably familiar force rising, and a storm suddenly rolled up right in front of me. Dark clouds covered the sun, tornado storms, and thunder exploded. Thunder and lightning flashed, and the wind howled. Countless containers around and Thor were all rolled up tens of meters in the air by the terrifying storm. Boom, crack, Suspended in the center of the tens of meters high storm, the storm rotates around Thor, whistling the warehouse, and countless dazzling thunderbolts are transformed into strands, like the legendary enlightenment, all poured into Thor's body, with a crackling sound that is endless. The momentum is frightening, just like the wrath of the sky. Holding Mjolnir in his hand, wearing armor, Thor squinted his eyes slightly, his body kept absorbing the power like a spring, and countless arcs jumped on him like energy. For ordinary people, the lightning that is enough to kill dead man is nothing to him. It's something like an arm. Feeling the gradual return of Thor's power, he really understands. The qualification mentioned by his father Odin is the awareness that he can sacrifice everything to protect others. When Thor was in Asgard before, he thought that the Titans disobeyed him and wanted to start a war desperately for his own face, Earth, and stripped him of his power as well as his hammer. However, just now, under desperate circumstances, Thor was willing to face the terrible destroyer alone for his friends, and almost died, so he has the qualifications to take up Mjolnir again. Mjolnir in No. 3 warehouse was sensed by the master, and all the power returned naturally. With lightning flashing in his eyes, Thor is back. Boom! The 4 Asgard warriors supported each other, looking at the mighty tornado storm. They all showed joy. I knew Thor would not let us down. Thor, God of War, is back. Ha ha ha, happy, happy. Su Zicheng and Jiali sat on the top of No. 3 warehouse under such a storm. Looking at Thor, who absorbed the power of the thunder and lightning in midair, Su Zicheng felt a little bit of pressure in his heart. Thor is definitely one of the ceiling combat powers of Marvel movies, whether it is setting or expressiveness. The crackling of thunder and lightning is not to mention how cool. The special effects are full. Even at the current elementary level, Thor is very powerful, unlike some superheroes, supervillains with strong settings but weak film expression. Thor is Thor. As the name suggests, he summons thunder and lightning, and the destructive power of thunder and lightning sweeps away everything. Basically, he has no shortcomings. He does damage, and he is also fleshy. His physical fitness is weaker than Hulk. That is, there is no flight ability. Rot. But the Meow Meow hammer can take itself hundreds of thousands of meters into the air with a few turns of the hammer, and the lightning can fly to the ground without knowing how high it is. When catching Loki, it's okay to jump from the height of the fight or flight. It's a shortcoming that is not a shortcoming, and Thor probably doesn't even care about it. However, this trace of pressure is not too great. After all, with Su Zicheng's current strength and equipment, he doesn't really discourage Thor. The lightning arrows condensed from the elemental bow are only stronger than Thor's lightning arrows, let alone the advanced elemental arrows that only have 5 chances a day. That is the real destruction. The expressive force is so strong that it is not a problem to blind the dog's eyes. Besides, LV.4 feet's indestructible body of King Kong is not a problem to save his life, and it is estimated that Thor will have to spend a lot of thought trying to break his defense. As for Carrie, the little guy just thinks things are getting more fun and nothing else. By the way, there should be a little bit of greed. I'm hungry again. Golly pursed her mouth, looking at the power of the thunder and lightning. Her saliva was about to flow down. She wished she could rush up and push Thor away, and let her eat those thunder and lightning. In the eyes of little Jiali, there are only 2 kinds of things in this world. Can and cannot eat. Such a huge situation, and the sound instantly quarreled many residents living near the pier. This storm tornado is hundreds of meters high, and its power is quite terrifying. From a very long distance, you can notice that some people with sharp eyes or with a mobile phone camera can even see the area covered by lightning in the center of the storm silhouette. All of a sudden, the situation suddenly rose, and countless people called it a miracle of the gods descending into the world. Many old people knelt down on the spot and began to pray and chant sutras. When it comes to superstition, in a country like the United States where religion is flourishing, it is much, much more severe than in other places. The destroyer was in the center of the storm. It raised its head, and the intense flames condensed on its striped face. Thor's strength is not bad, but the destroyer is just a robot, and does not have the real self-awareness of Ultron. At present, Loki, who temporarily replaces Odin as the king of God to manage Asgard, will execute whatever orders he gives him. Even if Thor's strength has been restored, it will also perform this task. The striped face armor opened to both sides. There was no face at all inside, only the extremely high temperature, magma-like energy matrix was condensing and boiling. Boom. After condensing to a certain level, passing hundreds of meters in an instant, the surrounding air gradually distorted, and the space seemed to be unable to withstand such a scorching heat, and suddenly shot toward Thor in the midair. And at the moment, Thor just finished energy absorption completely. The fully armed Thor returned to the earth in the attitude of a true god. At the height of 100 meters, he did not hide from the flames. He raised his Mjolnir in front of him, and directly descended from the air, suppressing it firmly. Flame magma. Hoo-hoo. The thunder exploded, lightning flashed in his eyes, and the red cloak fluttered behind him. Thor held Mjolnir in his hand, and swooped down from top to bottom to meet the terrifying attack. The destroyer was powerless against Thor in his prime, and the beam of energy shrank again and again, unable to cause any damage to Thor at all. Mjolnir hammered the destroyer hard on the head. This huge robot, known as the ultimate weapon, was directly smashed by Thor with a hammer, and it flew upside down, smashed through the wall of the warehouse next door, and fell to the ground, unable to move a step. The tornado subsided, and the night sky was cloudless. Thor floated to the ground. At the moment, he holds Mjolnir in his hand, wears a red robe, and is surrounded by electric arcs, which is Thor's most classic appearance. Exhale slowly. Thor suppressed his strength, the flashing light in his eyes gradually disappeared, and he stepped in front of the 4 Asgard warriors in a few strides. Although the 4 of them were bruised, they all had smiles on their faces, and they were happy for Thor. "Are you all right?" Thor held Vostag up and asked, "What's going on? Why did the destroyer come back to hunt us down?" "My father." The destroyer is the ultimate weapon created by Odin. He didn't think that his father would find such a terrifying robot to hunt down himself and his friends after degrading himself to the mortal world. And, the father is dead. Mother didn't want him to go back either. At the moment Thor looked a little lonely. Even if he regained the power of Thor, he still seemed to have nothing. "No, Thor, your father is not dead." And the 4 of Vostag looked at each other, and quickly told everything they knew, including the things Loki did in Asgard during this period. "Father is not dead." Thor's pupils shrank slightly, looking a little angry. He already knew that his brother Loki was lying to him, and that the destroyer in front of him was obviously the one Loki put down to kill them. "Shit," Thor cursed in a low voice. "We'll go back immediately." Definitely, he just said this in a moment of anger. Glancing at the slightly embarrassed Asgard 4 warriors who were supporting each other, "You guys take a good rest and recuperate. We'll go back together after you've recuperated. There just happens to be something else to deal with." "Okay." Vostage and the others nodded and sat down quietly. Don't look at them in distress, but as Asgard warriors who have experienced countless battles, they will recover soon. Thor took the hammer and came to the bottom of No. 3 warehouse. Seeing Su Zicheng and Jiali were still sitting there, he swung the hammer fiercely to the ground, and the lightning burst out. With a bang, he was directly lifted up by the impact of the lightning. With a leap of more than 10 meters, landed in front of Su Zicheng and Jiali. Compared with the ordinary man Thor just now Thor, who has recovered Thor's power, looks very high-spirited. "Let's have a fight." He picked up the hammer and pointed it at Gali, saying, "Definitely, it's not that Thor wants to bully the small with the big. Although Thor is full of arrogance, he is still very kind to children. The main reason is that Gali cannot be judged by common sense at all, and her strength is extremely terrifying. Thor really wants to fight with her to wash away the shame of being teased before. After all, although he has obtained the qualification to hold the hammer again, but Thor is still the proud Thor. But even so, it still looks a little funny for the majestic Thor to challenge a little lowly eating a tribute ball to let's fight." Su Zicheng looked at Thor, who was about to challenge Gali, and couldn't help laughing out loud. Thor's and Gali's eyes immediately focused on Su Zicheng. Cough cough. With a dry cough, Su Zicheng waved his hands again and again. "You can do whatever you want, and I'll be watching." "I don't want to fight." Jiali pursed her mouth. "Fighting is very boring, it will only consume my energy and make me hungrier. If it is not to fight for food, then everything will be meaningless, Gali." The corner of Thor's mouth twitched. He definitely didn't understand what Gali said, as long as you can defeat me, you can ask for anything. Then I want your hammer. Golly's big eyes lit up immediately, staring flickeringly at Mjolnir in Thor's hand. Her saliva was gradually secreting. I'm afraid this won't work. Thor trembled, always feeling that something bad was going to happen, and quickly put the hammer behind his back. Cannot be done. Giali pouted her lips, turned her purple eyes, pointed at the damaged warehouse not far away, and said with a grin, then I want that robot, can I? The robot refers to the destroyer. As she spoke, Giali glanced at Su Zicheng with pitiful little eyes, and motioned to Su Zicheng, I want to eat. In this regard, Su Zicheng could only nod helplessly in agreement with Xiao Jiali's stealing behavior. No problem. Now, Thor nodded without hesitation. The destroyer has been scrapped. Although the armor on his body is still very precious fine iron, and the energy blocks in it are also very surging, he knows nothing about forging. It is of no use to him, so there is no distress. As long as you can beat me. Be careful, I'm coming. Before the battle, Thor opened his mouth to remind. After all, he just wanted to learn from each other. What if he hurt someone? In this regard, Su Zicheng can only shrug his shoulders to show that you are thinking too much. Thor still wants to hit Golly. Maybe the peak Thor can fight with Golly a few tricks, but now this is just an ordinary first-generation Thor, and Golly is almost like an ant saying that he wants to an elephant. Honestly, pretty funny. But Su Zicheng didn't bother to say anything, he just jumped to the other side, making way for the two of them. If Giali wants to play, let her play. If the little guy wants to get some snacks to eat, he will not be idle to stop him, although Giali does not know why she is quite obedient to him. In fact, if possible, Su Zicheng also wants to feed Giali as much as possible. Well, it is said to feed Giali, but in fact it is to feed the cosmic tapeworm in Giali's body. After all, after feeding the cosmic tapeworm in a real sense, you won't be hungry. No problem. Giali nodded, a purple glow flashed in her eyes. Thornton suddenly felt a huge force coming, which turned into an invisible giant hand, trying to hold him. Feeling the terrifying power, he was startled suddenly. Thor let out a roar, and the thunder and lightning that had calmed down on his body flickered again in an instant, crackling, and the arc was several meters long, jumping on his body and in his eyes. It was more than ever before. The power of the thunder and lightning condensed in the whole body, and the flashing lightning in his eyes completely covered his pupils, leaving only a piece of lightning. Boom! Dark clouds gather in midair. The originally cloudless night sky once again accumulated a large black cloud with rumbling noises and flashing electric arcs. Raise the Mjolnir in your hand, all of which attract the lightning elements in the universe, and then enter the body from the hammer and use it for your own use, increasing yourself. What is thunder and lightning? It represents the power of destruction, and it is even more terrifying than flame in terms of attack. Seeing that Thor is about to explode, every move of that beast-like power seems to be able to destroy the world. Sitting aside, Su Zicheng looked at Thor and nodded. It is worthy of Thor, and worthy of the name of Marvel's sealing combat power. Facts have proved that no matter how explosive the seeds are in front of the absolute emperor, it is of no use. There are people beyond people, and there is a sky beyond the sky. You are strong and you are strong, I am stronger than you. Golly snorted softly, and the lightning on Thor's body was instantly wiped out like fire meeting water. What's the situation? An unbearable sense of oppression came, and Thor was like a cat that fell into the water. It was strangled and lifted up by the back of the neck, unable to move no matter how hard it struggled. Giali stretched out her slender hand, tapped the air with her index finger, and rotated it clockwise. Whiz! In an instant, the majestic Thor turned into a fan and came at extreme speed. The cold wind that blows out adds a touch of comfort to the summer night. Humph! Giali hummed an unknown song. 15 minutes was exactly the time. She sat on the edge of warehouse number 3, dangling her little feet hanging in the sky, and took out a planet from her watch and gnawed on it. At the same time, the other little hand didn't stop, and stretched out its index finger to control the poor Thor to fly left, right, up and down. He also likes to play some stunts from time to time, which looks very cool. Thor, who was completely treated as a toy, was very messy, with a constipated expression on his face. Repeat the trick. The same method as not long ago. Although Thor is in a completely different state from before, but in front of this little Lolita, he still looks like he has not changed. Faster and faster, faster and faster. Gali quickly proves something with Thor. That is, whether gods or humans will faint. If they don't, it's just that the speed of rotation has not reached the critical point of his tolerance. Thor was already a little dizzy and nauseated. This speed is too fast, and Thor, who is now physically strong, can't bear it. Stop, stop, I give up, he repeatedly begged for mercy. Gali shrugged, and I let it go. She didn't know how to win without hurting him. After all, as an existence comparable to the god of the universe, one punch or one kick might accidentally kill Thor. Finally, I thought of this method. Anyway, I have used it before, and it doesn't matter if I use it again. Thor landed on the ground, his complexion was yellowish, and his stomach rolled for a while. Finally, he couldn't help it, and knelt on the ground next to him and vomited. It looked a little miserable. Su Zicheng shook his head. When he didn't become a bounty hunter, he was most afraid of fainting, because his stomach was bad at that time, he was prone to retching, and he would vomit when he smelled some bad smells, let alone fainting. It's not uncommon to vomit until you get sick, it's very real. Now it's nothing, after all, 100 constitution, really iron stomach. I lost. Thor slowed down for a while, and finally recovered. With a look of rebirth, he looked at Jiali who was gnawing on the planet. In an instant, it seemed that something had been discovered, as if struck by lightning, the whole body trembled. Understood, the robot belongs to me, right? Gali ate the last bit and looked at Thor. Well yes, Thor nodded stiffly. That's good, hee hee. Jiali smiled playfully, and flew directly from the top of the warehouse towards the place where the robot hit. That's right, just fly away. Flight is the most basic ability for a boss of Jiali's level. Watching Jiali enter the warehouse and don't know what to do. Thor breathed a sigh of relief for no reason, and jumped down in front of the 4 Asgard warriors, saying, "Has everyone recovered? Let's go back now." He seemed a little impatient. No way. As Thor, the son of Odin, he still has this vision. At a glance, I could tell what Gali was holding. Thor didn't want to believe it at the moment he found out, and his 3 views were ruined. They are all little girls who sell matches, and if they are more awesome, they will have a big appetite, eat roast chicken, roast duck, and roast chicken legs, and the little girl who sells nuclear bombs. What about this? The little girl who ate the planet. Thor immediately labeled the little girl as not to be provoked. Immediately I want to take my 4 good friends back to Asgard, avoid the little girl, and at the same time go back and deal with what happened during this period. 10 lessons for my younger brother who cheated on Big Brother. Although Thor can also see that this planet is just a dead and useless planet that cannot breed life. But it's also a planet. How big would it be to be called a planet? This little girl is like 2 people, don't be too scary. Vostag eats a lot of fart, any big eater has to kneel in front of her. Vostag and the other 4 didn't know what happened. But facing Thor who was in such a hurry, he could only nod. As Asgard fighters, recovering their ability is naturally not covered. Although they haven't fully recovered in a while, they have already recovered 5, 6, and it is enough to deal with the next thing. Well, let's go then. Thor is gone. Take the Asgard warriors away. The next step is probably to teach Loki a lesson and prevent the war. However, this has nothing to do with Su Zicheng. He yawned and came to the wrecked warehouse. This warehouse was the Han's Independence factory before, and because of the crash, white powder splashed everywhere, and the blind people who made Independence were basically all killed by the disaster. And the little Jiali was standing in front of the big robot, staring at the big robot destroyer, with her small face huddled together, looking very tangled. What's wrong? Su Zicheng stepped forward and stroked Jiali's black hair. I don't know how to eat. Jiali pouted. I don't want to be too big, it's too ugly. According to your human aesthetics, you may not like mine, but the original taste is delicious. Ha ha. Su Zicheng was slightly taken aback, then laughed heartily and said, "Aren't you a boss? Can you just turn the destroyer into an energy body and eat it?" Okay. Jiali pursed her mouth, although she preferred to swallow the destroyer in one gulp, but Su Zicheng said so let's do it. With a thought, the destroyer in front of him instantly melted, turning into a liquid like water, which was slowly poured into Jiali's small mouth. Soon, a large pool of energy body was absorbed. Jiali squinted her eyes and patted her stomach enjoyingly. Although I'm still very hungry, it's already very good. Still hungry. Su Zicheng thought about it a little. He knew why Jiali was hungry. It is nothing more than the cosmic tapeworm in the body. There are two ways to make Jiali not hungry. One is to feed the cosmic tapeworm, and the other is to remove the cosmic tapeworm with a device. Definitely, Su Zicheng, who has read the manga, said that the second method will not work, because then Jiali will die. So the only way it's going to work is to feed that cosmic tapeworm. Glancing at Jiali, Su Zicheng sighed. There is a long way to go. Go home, go home. Jiali was very satisfied. She watched a play tonight and ate a lot of food today. It was the fullest day she had eaten since she was born. Although I am still very hungry, compared to before, this kind of hunger is bearable for the time being. Definitely, if she just stopped eating, she would soon regain that horrible abyss-like hunger that could almost swallow everything. Okay. Holding Jiali's little hand, Su Zicheng looked at her and said with a smile, go back. Huh, what does that mean? The all-knowing and all-powerful Gali doesn't know what I mean. HMPH. What a stinker. I just don't want to read your mind. Okay, let's stop making trouble. Isn't this already over? Let our all-knowing and invincible little Jiali take me home, good boy. HMPH. What's yours? Talk nonsense, let's go. The next morning, Su Zicheng, who was sleeping, only felt that his chest was very tight. It was as if something was pressing on him. Frowning, Su Zicheng woke up suddenly, panting heavily, and quickly lifted the quilt. Sure enough, just as he expected, there is a cute little loli lying on his chest, and he is sleeping soundly while hugging him in the posture of an octopus. The little head was leaning against his chest, with his eyes tightly closed, and he seemed to be sleeping soundly. Watching and watching, Su Zicheng became crazy. There is no way. Jiali's little loli's appearance is the top existence in the Marvel world, and the oriental face is really stabbing Su Zicheng's heart, like someone scratching his chest with Cupid's arrow, scratch and scratch. In addition, in the morning there are already some wrong. Suddenly, Su Zicheng woke up with a start. He shook his head violently. I'm not Lolicon, I'm not Lolicon. Su Zicheng is crazy about hypnotic ability himself. The maximum death penalty for 3 years. The maximum death penalty for 3 years. I am not a lolicon. I am not a lolicon. After a long time, Su Zicheng finally suppressed the restlessness in his heart. But Jiali also woke up because of Su Zicheng's actions. With big eyes and a hint of sleepiness, the drowsy little Jiali stared blankly at Su Zicheng. Her hair was a little messy, like a cute kitten. Shet. Another blow. Su Zicheng clutched his chest. How can you be so cute? So strong, good looking, let others live. Ah, you like me. Jiali was still leaning on Su Zicheng's chest, with her head tilted to one side, her red lips slightly parted, her voice was clear and sweet, with a trace of laziness just waking up. Do not. Su Zicheng shook his head violently. I don't like it, I'm not a lolicon, no. You're lying. Jiali sat up slowly, sitting on Su Zicheng's abdomen, with her small hands on his chest, looking directly at Su Zicheng, her big eyes bent into crescents, her pretty face flushed, like a person who had stolen food. Qian knew how the little foxes of good food are average. Wait, Su Zicheng was about to change the subject, but as if he suddenly remembered something, he looked at the little Jiali in front of him warily. Didn't I agree that you were sleeping next door? Why did you come to my bed? Come here when you fall asleep. Jiali pouted unreasonably and confidently, and said aggrievedly, I give you a hug and still despise me. No, how could it be? Su Zicheng softened his heart. Little Lolita, Ang. What? As soon as this sentence came out, Jiali immediately narrowed her big purple eyes, shifted slightly, from her abdomen to her chest, and looked down at Su Zicheng, just when Su Zicheng thought that this little girl was going to make trouble. She suddenly said in a serious manner, I'm not a loli. Su Zicheng was speechless. Why? Lolita is used to express cute little girls aged 10 to 14. Little Gali whimpered and said, I'm not a loli, I'm very big. Aren't you a loli who are? Su Zicheng raised his eyebrows and said, you look like a lolita now. HMPH, I can also become the hairy chest guy you hate the most, believe it or not. Jiali pouted, clenched her small hand and waved it around, protesting dissatisfied. Shet. Su Zicheng's body froze suddenly. Although Jiali is a cute little loli, she is quite different in the eyes of other creatures, but in terms of her powerful ability, she can really become a muscular man with chest hair and beard. The thought of a big hairy man sitting tenderly on his chest, condescendingly staring at him affectionately. Hiss. That feeling is really my sloppy, ruthless batch. Just thinking about it makes my skin crawl. He looked at Jiali, who had a hint of embarrassment at the corner of her mouth, twitched, and couldn't help complaining, "Sometimes you are so uncute." HMPH, who told you to say that I belong to Lolita? Jiali shook her head chatteringly. Then what do you say you are? Su Zicheng sighed. This loli is obviously very strong but is too shady. Girl, Jiali said coquettishly without any hesitation. Jiali is a girl. All right, a girl is a girl. Su Zicheng looked at the mentally retarded expression on his face, and at the same time, he was still muttering in his heart, if you are a girl, then don't you feel guilty? Hey, no, don't think too much. If you attract Galactus' attention and find yourself beating him, daughter's idea, isn't that the end? What time is it now? He tried helplessly to change the subject, but he had no choice but to be suppressed by Xiao Jiali. Unable to get up to check the time, he could only rely on his feeling, it should be early now. 5 in the morning. Jiali rolled her big eyes and replied. It's only 5 o'clock. Su Zicheng glared at Jiali lightly, waking himself up early in the morning. When he is not doing tasks or going to school, he always sleeps until he wakes up naturally. It's still early, go to sleep, girl. He deliberately emphasized his tone in the last two words, pressed Jiali on his chest as if in revenge, hugged her tightly, closed his eyes and continued to sleep. You treat me like a pillow, and I treat you like a pillow, even. Su Zicheng specially bought Jiali a little dinosaur one-piece pajamas last night. After all, she shouldn't be allowed to wear a dress or sleep naked, right? Leaving aside whether Su Zicheng can stand it, Jiali probably doesn't want to either. But what I have to say is that this kind of Jiali is very cute, looks naive, and is very comfortable to hold. She is not tall, which is simply a perfect throw pillow for Su Zicheng. Jiali snorted arrogantly, took out a planet from the watch and threw it into her mouth, then found a comfortable place in Su Zicheng's arms and continued to sleep. Su Zicheng slept with Jiali in his arms until 9 o'clock in the morning. When he woke up again, Jiali was no longer lying on top of him, but sat up and gnawed on the planet. Ah, Su Zicheng stretched lazily, and yawned sleepily. Golly, go wash up. I don't need to wash up. Li babbled and snorted, even if I haven't washed for tens of thousands of years, I'm still cleaner than those mortals. There is one thing to say, indeed. With Jiali's physique, how could there be bacteria and dirt on her body that ordinary mortals have? What is the dirt on the human body? It is nothing more than the garbage, dead cells and a small amount of external dust discharged from the body during metabolism. These things do not exist for Jiali. Therefore, she is definitely clean. Su Zicheng curled his lips and said, if you don't go, I will go, a stinky girl who eats planets all day long and doesn't mind being dirty. In fact, with this level of physique, it is difficult for dust from the outside to touch him, and it is difficult for dirt to appear on him, but it is a habit for many years. If you don't wash your face or take a bath, you will always feel that your body is dirty. Maybe this is a psychological effect. Rot. Hey. Jiali was a little upset when she heard those 3 words, and quickly called Su Zicheng to stop. What's wrong? Su Zicheng scratched his head. Cough cough. The girl in the pajamas of the little dinosaur immediately realized that her reaction seemed to be a bit too much. She crossed her arms and raised her head proudly. If you help me wash it, I will reluctantly agree to it. Okay. Su Zicheng rolled his eyes and smiled helplessly. Did I spend 500 million to find a little ancestor? Then let's go. Little Jiali waved her hand and bounced to the bathroom. The next step was the washing session. Su Zicheng brushed his teeth first, then washed his face, and then helped Jiali wipe her face and so on. 0. Although it is impossible for Jiali to get dirty, Su Zicheng still wipes very seriously. Definitely, brushing teeth is naturally included in washing, and it seems that because of Su Zicheng's casual remark, Xiao Jiali spent 3 times as much time brushing her teeth as brushing her face. Okay, let's go have breakfast. Su Zicheng patted Jiali's little butt. I'll take you to the villa later. It doesn't take long to finish the task just now, and there is a little Jiali at home. Su Zicheng is not ready to continue to accept the task. At least take Jiali to play for a few days. But when it comes to playing, what I can play in my hometown are those online games, which can be played in villas in the suburbs of Manhattan, and the surrounding facilities are not bad, and the open spaces such as golf courses and horse farms are much fresher. If you want to play, you must go there to play. Oh. Jiali nodded, and jumped into the kitchen to make breakfast. Don't be surprised, she is also willing to try the food on the earth while eating the planet. After all, planets have no taste, except for cosmic energy, which is cosmic energy. In order to suppress hunger, she would choose to eat planets. When it comes to taste, or the delicacies on Earth are more in line with little Jiali's appetite. Because Su Zicheng and Jiali are actually not very good at cooking breakfast. In fact, it is 2 bites in a hurry. It's very simple to do. 2 bowls of cereal and a few slices of bread with some jam to spread. Definitely, it should be spread with peanut butter, but Su Zicheng thinks peanut butter is not tasty, so he replaced it with strawberry jam and blueberry jam. Once the jam is spread and 2 slices of bread are sandwiched, the taste is not very good. Jiali clutched her belly and looked at Su Zicheng aggrievedly. I still want to eat. Okay, I'll get it for you. What Su Zicheng couldn't stand the most was Jiali's eyes, so he had to take out all the stocks at home. It was about 6 bags of 110 tablets, which should have been 114, but he ate 2 and Jiali ate 2, so now there are only 110 tablets left in 590. There are also 2 small jars of jam, which are not used much. In this way, although Li ate very ladylike, she ate all the bread and jam within 10 minutes. Su Zicheng didn't bother to say anything about this, because he was getting used to Jiali with such a big appetite. No surprise, no horror, no twitching. The only idea I have is to buy more bread another day. It is best to replace the refrigerator. The fresh keeping layer can hold 12 bags. Anyway, buy a big one, the more you can eat. Son, have you finished eating? Su Zicheng wanted to reach out and wipe the jam off Jiali's lips. Who knew that the little girl, Jiali, would stick out her little tongue and lick it off without any emotion, and she even had a reminiscing expression on her face. You stinky girl, you really don't understand sentiment. Su Zicheng glared at her. Jiali rolled her eyes. She didn't know what happened, anyway, she just rolled her eyes. It's over. She stood on the chair, breathed a long sigh of relief, and then took out another tribute ball from the watch and gnawed it. 15 minutes, Li Kei's calculations were very accurate. Even when she was sleeping at night, Jiali would unconsciously produce the watch at 15 minutes and eat it. This is estimated to gradually develop into an instinct, in order not to be woken up by hunger at night. After eating, go change your clothes and get ready to go, let's go and have fun. Su Zicheng patted Jiali on the head and said, okay. Jiali entered the room and changed into the purple tutu skirt from yesterday. I still have to buy another one for everyday wear. Su Zicheng stroked his chin, and looked at little Gali from top to bottom. Obviously, wearing a purple gothic tutu skirt can't go anywhere. Buy. Why buy? In fact, Jiali was very puzzled by Su Zicheng's behavior of buying the little dinosaur one-piece pajamas last night, but because it was too late last night, she had no time to say anything. Why buy it? I can change it directly. Carrie spoke her mind. Change. Su Zicheng rolled his eyes. Are you going to buy incense after changing it? Anyway, just go shopping with me. In fact, he just wanted to find something to do with Jiali. Like that, everything depends on changes all day long, so what if he has a powerful ability, how boring would life be? As he spoke, he grabbed Li Cheng and went to the commercial street. Spend the rest of the morning shopping on the commercial street. Su Zicheng probably bought about 10 pieces of clothing for Jiali, such as small skirts, cropped trousers, short sleeves for daily wear, and K uniforms, knee socks and white silk that he bought out of his own selfishness. Finally, let Jiali change the clothes into cropped pants and short sleeves in the store. Puff skirts are not used to many places. Still cute. Su Zicheng gave a thumbs up to the young girl who looked full of greenness. Jiali snorted arrogantly. I'm hungry. It's lunch time. Su Zicheng didn't check the time. Little Jiali's stomach was more accurate than any clock in the world. Let's go eat delicious food today. He took Jiali to a Chinese restaurant. Although the Chinese dishes in the United States Chinese restaurant are basically the modified United States Chinese food, they are considered Chinese food anyway. According to Su Zicheng, even after the magic modification, Chinese food is better than those fast food. 3 hours for lunch. Devil Golly once again ate up other people's restaurants. As for Su Zicheng, just eat a bowl of white rice and some side dishes, and then follow the rest of the time to pay. The owner of the restaurant couldn't be happier, because Jiali didn't eat enough food for a day or two. They cooked all the dishes in the back kitchen, whether they were new dishes or the dishes from the previous few days, month. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Su Zicheng took Jiali to the big villa in Manhattan. Clothes are stuffed in the hunter space. Alas! It was already evening when the two arrived at the big villa. Su Zicheng leaned comfortably on the soft sofa and stretched. Carrie had a smile on her face. The two of them had a very fulfilling life all day today. After all, they were alone all the time, and suddenly there was one more person to accompany them. No matter what they did, they were energetic. Are you tired today? Su Zicheng looked at Jiali and asked with concern. Not tired. Jiali shook her head, giggled and said, how could I know how to garden? 2. Su Zicheng stood up from the sofa, left Ruanrushang, and looked at the sun that had not yet set. Then let's go, we will take you to play golf before the sun sets today. Anyway, it's only about 3:30. Although the golf course is very large, it takes about 4 hours for ordinary people to finish playing 18 holes, but the two of them are different. Even if it is not a hole in par, it only takes 2 hours. Just had dinner after golf and started other projects. Another new attempt. There was a trace of interest in Jiali's eyes. She nodded and waved her small fist. Let's go. Let's go. Golf course. Golf is to use a pull to hit a small ball into a hole, and whoever uses the fewest strokes wins. A game is usually 9 or 18 holes. The golf course next to the villa belongs to the 18 holes. After Su Zicheng entered the golf course, he asked Xiao Jiali to wait here at the starting point, while he went to get a few double-layer balls. Double-layer balls are very commonly used balls. The outside of the ball center is made of hard rubber or plastic, or a mixture of the two is used to make the shell, with a thickness of about 1 mm. At present, most of the golf balls with long flight distance or wear resistance on the market adopt this structure, which is the best choice for general golfers. Although Su Zicheng and Jiali are obviously not amateurs, there are naturally better choices in terms of balls, but it is only 2 strokes, there is no need for them, they are all taken casually by him. In addition, Su Zicheng also got 2 clubs. They are all freshly bought, and the ball heads, shafts, and grips are all very new. Here, take it. Su Zicheng threw a golf ball to Jiali. Jiali caught it and fiddled with it curiously. Come on, stand here. Su Zicheng looked like a good teacher and helpful friend, pushed Jiali to the tee point, grasped Jiali's hands with both hands, leaned slightly, and explained, when you take off the shot, your shoulders should be behind the ball and the wood, and your hips should be the best. Don't swing. To play golf well, the strength of the left wrist and forearm and the strength of the whole body must be used very well. Golf is not a wrist game. Can't hit the ball very far. The swing should be good, the jaw should not be too low, the head should be raised a little, so that the rotation of the shoulders will not be restricted, the 2 feet should stand together across the line, the left toe should be slightly turned outward, and the left heel should be close to the line. Both feet shoulder width apart, shift your weight to your left foot, and step your right foot out to the right as you swing. This sentence was said by Golly. The little girl looked at Su Zicheng with an idiot expression on her face, and then even got out of Su Zicheng's arms, and made a swing for him. Su Zicheng swung a shot in this bewilderment. The golf ball flew tens of meters and went into the hole hollow. How about it? Am I a good teacher? Jiali said as if asking for credit. Awesome. Wait a minute. Su Zicheng nodded, then reacted abruptly, squinting at Jiali. Obviously I taught you, why did you teach me? Because you taught too superficially. With her hands on her hips, Jiali said proudly, I know everything you said. A trace of cold sweat dripped down Su Zicheng's forehead. The whole day of getting along today made him forget that there seems to be an omniscient and omnipotent in Jiali's settings. How could it be possible that he can't play golf? And Jiali next to him seemed to prove this to Su Zicheng, posing a pretty perfect posture, and then hit a shot. Snapped, snapped. One after another, Jiali opened 7 balls in 10 seconds. Those 7 balls all crossed a beautiful arc and hit 7 holes without rolling, but went hollow like Su Zicheng. Play a game of golf and let them play like basketball. Wow, awesome, awesome, too strong. Can you teach me? There are relatively few people on the golf course now, but there are still a few. And the little Jiali is beautiful, and except for those who have already played, basically everyone's attention is attracted. At a glance, he can see the high-level operation of hitting 7 balls in 10 seconds, and all 7 balls are in the hole. Omniscient girl, you seem to be targeted. Su Zicheng teased. Let you insist on showing off. Humph. Jiali is very unaccustomed to being stared at by others, so she came to Su Zicheng shyly, took his arm, and said, "Let's go, golf is boring." Result. Su Zicheng planned to take Jiali to play golf for 2 hours but failed. After arriving at the golf course, the time for buying clubs and balls is removed, and the total time does not exceed 2 minutes. But the guys playing golf nearby seem to be getting more and more enthusiastic. Definitely, the reason for the enthusiasm, good golf is only half of it, and the other half is that Carrie is just too cute. Kill men, women and children. Although Su Zicheng was unhappy, he couldn't kill them all, he wasn't some crazy murderer, it was really unnecessary. The big deal is not to play golf. Going for a horse ride at the horse farm next door is also fantastic. Determined, Su Zicheng brought Jiali to the racecourse. Originally, Su Zicheng and the owner of the racecourse wanted Jiali to choose a horse that was relatively docile, but who knew that Jiali directly chose those dark horses that were well known in the racecourse. His temper is not ordinary, and he seems to have kicked people before. No one has been able to ride on the horse farm until now. Definitely, let a horse calm down. Although it is a strong horse, it is actually very simple for Su Zicheng, but he came to the racecourse for entertainment and not to pretend. In the past few times he rode a horse randomly to run in the racecourse just go in 2 laps. The feeling of, I live a chic and unrestrained life with you in the world of mortals, and ride a horse to share the prosperity of the world, is still very wonderful. The owner of the racecourse very much refused Jiali to ride the horse at first. After all, Jiali looks like a girl, Li. He doesn't think that Jiali can hold this horse, or she can't ride it at all, and she is kicked, and she is thrown off after riding it. No matter what it was, he felt that it was impossible for Galina to carry it with her small body. The truth is more or less the same. The dark horse is grumpy, very, very grumpy. But Jiali was not bad either. Under the watchful eyes of Su Zicheng and the owner of the racecourse, she gave the black horse a hard look. The black horse immediately looked like an eggplant beaten by frost. The whole horse bowed its head very docilely to Jiali, and Jiali also turned on the horse in a very standard posture, like a heroic female knight, and began to walk on the horse. Galloping horses in the racecourse. The owner of the racecourse was amazed again and again. Su Zicheng gave Jiali a thumbs up. Randomly pick a horse to catch up with. How do you feel? It's okay, nothing. Su Zicheng sighed with black lines all over his head. Something that would challenge you, a cosmic god, I don't think would happen on Earth. After an hour of horseback riding, a few laps in the racecourse, and a breath of fresh air, Su Zicheng and Jiali left. And after the two left, the owner of the racecourse once thought that something was wrong with the black horse, and wanted to ride it to see if he could make him as docile as Jiali. The result was obvious. The owner of the racecourse was thrown off without even getting on the horse's back, and almost escaped the internal injury from the shock. Fortunately, the dark horse didn't go up to make up for it because he was a shit shoveler, otherwise it would not be impossible to hate him on the spot. Back home, Su Zicheng had already ordered a takeaway meal when he was at the racecourse. Eat Chinese food at noon. Eat Western food in the evening. Sir, are there only 2 in your family? The white waiter who came to deliver the food looked at Su Zicheng with sweat on his face. Because they delivered almost all the inventory of their high-end Western restaurant this time, all chefs and kitchens have been doing it since an hour ago, just for this one order. The shipment was all brought in by truck, and it was as scary as at least 100 people. Mind yourself. Su Zicheng coughed dryly, glared at the white man, and handed him a few tips, let's go, just put the food in the villa, and we'll take care of the rest. Thank you, sir. When the white waiter saw the number, his eyes straightened instantly, he nodded again, and then moved all the things down with great vigor. Jiali, who had been waiting by the side, was going to die of hunger. Steak, foie gras, salad, salmon, lobster, fish soup, roast turkey. The quantity is actually inconsistent. After all, it is all the ingredients of a store. They also have a plan for buying things. They buy more of what sells better. How can they be consistent? Jiali really wanted to use the super ability to move all these things down, and then start to feast on them. But Su Zicheng told him that it is best not to show super abilities in front of ordinary people, which made her very entangled. A full 10 minutes passed. A truckload of food has just been moved. I wish Sir and Miss a pleasant meal, let's go first. The dining table in the villa is completely covered with all kinds of food. That is to say, the living room of the villa is relatively large, otherwise it really cannot accommodate so much food. Death. Su Zicheng stood in the living room and took a deep breath. There are all kinds of aromas, and my stomach is growling. Can I start eating? Jiali looked at Su Zicheng eagerly, and endured it for a long time. During this period, she ate 2 planets. Although she could suppress her hunger, it had no taste. Still, these things are more delicious. Let's start eating. Su Zicheng rubbed Jiali's little head, and smiled dotingly. Yeah, Jiali jumped up and down like a child, and began to feast on it. She didn't turn it into an energy body and swallow it whole like eating the destroyer, but ate it with small mouthfuls of cherries. It was Su Zicheng who taught her. Life is alive, you have to know how to enjoy it. Some things don't need to be fast, so don't be fast. In this respect, slowing down and eating slowly is obviously much more delicious than swallowing jujubes whole. For this, Jiali didn't have any objection, because she felt the same way. Because there are a lot of reasons for these ingredients tonight. Su Zicheng also watched the movie and ate slowly. From time to time, I would take a sip of red wine, and then take a doting glance at the little Jiali who was feasting with the eyes of her daughter. Half an hour passed. The food was only half eaten. Jiali, who was eating very happily, changed her expression slightly. For the first time, she became a little cold. With a cold snort, the temperature of the surrounding air seemed to drop to freezing point, and the purple light in her eyes flashed past. Soon, I ate again. Su Zicheng naturally has a panoramic view of Jiali's situation. Originally, I wanted to ask about the situation, but when I saw Jiali enjoying the food, I suppressed my curiosity. Another half hour passed. A whole truckload of Western food, whether it's steak, foie gras, big lobster, or anything fancy. Satisfied, Jiali patted her belly, imitating Su Zicheng, and slumped on the sofa, half closed her eyes, as if she was going to sleep after eating. Gary. At this time, Su Zicheng came to Jiali's side, rubbed her little head, and asked softly, "What happened just now? Why don't you tell me?" "What's the matter?" Jiali seems to have really forgotten, with a cute face. Su Zicheng's forehead is full of black lines. "It's what happened when you were halfway through eating just now." "Oh, that thing." Jiali suddenly realized, and then snorted coldly. "Someone wanted to kill us with a murderous intent, and interrupted our dinner. There is no forgiveness for that. Just let me. You don't blame me, do you?" She didn't continue talking about the backbone. But Su Zicheng definitely understood what it meant, stroked Jiali's smooth black hair, and said gently, "How could I blame you for killing a few people who wanted to kill us? However, if there are still such, it's not too late to kill me before you tell me about this kind of thing, okay?" "Aha." Gali nodded obediently. She was also angry for a while just now. For a foodie, being disturbed while eating, if it is not a particularly close person, then she is courting death. But since Su Zicheng has said so, he will naturally restrain himself afterwards. "Okay, just take me to find those unlucky fool you killed." Su Zicheng held Jiali's little hand. "Set off." Jiali Nenin's lowly voice fell, and Su Zicheng appeared beside a tree about 300 meters away from the villa. And beside the tree, 5 Nonuo Jiao guys in dark red ninja costumes all fell to the ground without making a sound. "It's so close." Su Zicheng scratched his head, a little embarrassed. At a distance of 300 meters, it can be sensed by telepathy. But being with Jiali all day today made her seem very relaxed, a little bit off guard. That's why she didn't even notice that someone who was murderous towards her entered the range of 300 meters around her. As soon as this happened, Su Zicheng alerted himself in his heart. Golly's ability is Golly's ability, not his. In things like Marvel, you must be vigilant at all times. Definitely, the vigilance mentioned here does not mean being overly cautious like a neuropathy, but just paying attention to the situation around the body. For Su Zicheng, it can be done quietly. Chapter 101. Su Zicheng came to the 5 corpses. These 5 corpses are all wearing uniform dark red ninja costumes, with crossed darts and katana pinned to their waists. The identity is already very obvious, it is the ninja killers of the hand. Su Zicheng randomly found a person and squatted down, tearing off the mask. This is an Asian face with 2 mustaches, similar to a florist but slightly different. It should be a chicken with feet. The clothes on his body were in good condition, and there were no obvious wounds, but his face was extremely ferocious, his eyes were glaring, and there was still a trace of fear left. Basically every ninja in the hand has trained himself since he was a child, and he is almost invincible to ordinary people in terms of physical resistance and mental ability. You can kill him, but you can't make him afraid, because he is not afraid of death. You can torture him, but they have tried all the horrible tortures in the world, and they will not betray the hand because of a small torture. They know that even if they survive because of this, the hand will not let them go. Therefore, people who know the hand will call them crazy ninjas, as the name suggests, crazy ninjas. However, with such a group of ninjas, at the moment's eyes were frightened, looking horrified. It was obvious that he had suffered horrific torture during his lifetime. And it should be spiritual. The corner of Su Zicheng's mouth twitched. He took out the bow of elements and burned them one by one, destroying the corpses and obliterating the traces. Okay, let's go. Su Zicheng rubbed Jiali's little head, took her little hand, and went back to the villa. The hand ninja had figured out where he was. He also understands that the hand may have issued a kill order for him. Harmless though. Come 1 to kill 1, come 2 to kill 1 pair. Not to mention Jiali, even Su Zicheng can easily arrange these ninjas who are just trained ordinary people. After this period of time passes, he may find an opportunity to talk with Mrs. Gao. In the next few days, Su Zicheng and Jiali were playing around. Games, singing, swimming, playing ball. Although Su Zicheng had already played it before, now it is a completely different feeling to play with Jiali. The only pity is that this little girl, Jiali, really lives up to her reputation as omniscient and omnipotent. She can play with almost everything, and she can play with flying skills. Sometimes omniscience is not necessarily a good thing. While Su Zicheng and Jiali are relaxing and playing. Somewhere in the United States, the owner of the SHIELD base. Not long ago, the superior sent a notification that all SHIELD agents were retreating in an orderly manner. Nick Fury also rushed to the base by helicopter. As Nick Fury's exclusive follower, Phil Coulson was waiting for Nick Fury's arrival at the base early on. How's the situation? All the surrounding agents are in emergency retreat. Wearing a black windbreaker, Nick Fury asked Phil Coulson on the side while walking towards the underground base. 4 hours ago, Dr. Hillwig detected a burst of energy from the Rubik's Cube. Phil Coulson replied. The space agency did not authorize the doctor to conduct tests. Nick Fury said calmly. There were no tests and he wasn't even in the room. Phil Coulson went on to answer. It's an automatic trigger, it just activates. What's the energy level now? Ascending. After confirming that the doctor cannot be closed, an emergency evacuation has been ordered. How long will it take for all to evacuate? Nick Fury looked a little headache. So much has happened during this time. Big monster abominations, bounty hunters, a storm on a dock in Manhattan, and now the Tesseract. It can be cleared in half an hour. Phil Coulson said. Hurry up. Nick Fury nodded, and went to the laboratory with the Tesseract together with Agent Hill. Phil Coulson continued to direct the evacuation. Sir, I don't think it's useless to evacuate. Hill agent followed behind Nick Fury and said. Should they be allowed to sleep at home? Nick Fury said. He definitely knows that evacuation is useless, because if the energy of the Tesseract continues to rise, then the final result may be that no one on the entire Earth will be spared, and even the entire Earth will be directly annihilated. At that time, it is obviously useless to hide anywhere. If we can't secure control of the Tesseract's energy, I feel. Before Agent Hill could speak, Nick Fury interrupted her. Unless it's the end of the world, everything that should be done must be done. Now I want you to ensure that the second stage prototype can be transferred safely, and all related equipment will be transported. Walk. Quote. Yes, sir. Hill agent looked helpless, but Nick Fury was right. Quote. Exclamation mark. Quote. Sudden. The tesseract placed in the instrument began to flicker greatly, and waves of incomparably terrifying energy radiated outward. SHIELD's entire base, including its location, trembled. Nick Fury was taken aback, and immediately went to his laboratory. Doctor, what happened? He asked immediately. The tesseract is constantly emitting jamming and radiation. Dr. Hillwig looked a little flustered, looking at the rapidly increasing data on the computer, just about to say something. I saw violent energy fluctuations suddenly appearing in the place where the tesseract was placed, gradually turning into a vortex, and buzzing sounds one after another. When this energy condenses to an extreme, a wave of unparalleled energy emanates from the center of the tesseract. Actually, a large space wormhole slowly opened in the space ahead. Looking inside, it was a vast starry sky. Nick Fury, Dr. Hillwig and the surrounding agents all looked dumbfounded. Moment. The space wormhole opened to the extreme suddenly shattered. Nick Fury and the others looked closely, and there was a half-kneeling figure on the place where the space wormhole was originally located. The figure stood up slowly. He was dressed strangely and held a scepter in his hand. He, of course, is Loki. This scene seemed to shock everyone. Quote. Exclamation mark. Quote. Nick Fury shouted from the air, please put down your spears. Loki glanced blankly at the scepter in his hand, then pointed the scepter at the agents holding rifles in front of him. The energy was condensed in an instant, and shot out with a buzz. The sudden situation caused all the agents present to point their guns at Loki and start shooting wildly. However, even the most powerful trolls only made Loki's footsteps stop slightly, and did not cause any damage. On the contrary, within a few seconds, Loki dealt with the agents completely. Then, Loki pointed the scepter inlaid with mind gem at Hawkeye Barton's chest just like in the plot. A wave of energy is slowly output. You are special. Barton's eyes gradually darkened, slowly turned back to the original appearance. Seeing this situation, Loki showed a smile at the corner of his mouth, slowly retracted the scepter, and then went to control the next agent. At this time, Nick Fury secretly took out the tesseract from the device, put it in the box, and was about to leave. Put down the box, Loki said suddenly. I really need it. He really needs the tesseract to invade Earth. There's no need to be so nervous, is there? Nick Fury turned his back to Loki, said. Definitely necessary. Loki held the scepter in his hand, and said, the reason why the old man came to the old man's house is to pay back money. Nick Fury turned slowly, looking Loki squarely. I am Loki, from the realm of the gods. Loki said. I have a great mission that you cannot comprehend. Loki. Dr. Hillwig, who was treating the agent next to him, stood up. Are you Thor's brother? Dr. Hillwig is Jane's teacher, the one who helped Thor. We have no enmity with you. Nick Fury squinted at Loki. The ants have nothing to do with your shoes. Loki raised his head proudly, showing his nostrils. So, you want to trample us to death? Nick Fury continued. Loki chuckled, turned around suddenly, pointed the scepter at Dr. Hillwig's heart, and controlled it. Sir, Commander Fury is stalling for time. At this time, Barton, who was controlled by Loki, seemed to have discovered something, walked to Loki's side, and said, soon this place will be bombed, we will be buried under the pile of cloth. A pile of stones hundreds of meters away. Nick Fury added, it's like pyramids. He's right, the portals are starting to crumble. Dr. Hillwig, who was staring at the computer, said, there are still 2 minutes before the complete subversion. Okay, Loki shrugged. Barton pulled out his pistol without any hesitation, and knocked Nick Fury to the ground with one shot. Immediately afterwards, go forward with Loki to pick up the box containing the tesseract, and escape from the shield base here. And after a few minutes of chasing, all agents have been evacuated. Boom. With a loud noise, the entire shield base suddenly exploded, including all the buildings underground, which were crushed into stones at this moment and collapsed. Some of the agents who were chasing Loki along with Hill are crushed in the tunnel. Loki was not injured at all, and together with Barton and other controlled people, he left the shield base with Tesseract. Sir, there are a lot of people under the pressure, and I don't know how many will survive. Hill suffered a lot of injuries, took out the walkie-talkie from his pocket, and said. Listen to Hill. Nick Fury was silent for a while. Phil Coulson, you go back to the base and issue a level 7 alert. Judging from the current situation, the war has already begun. Phil Coulson was silent for a long time. What shall we do? Nick Fury didn't speak. He just silently looked at the ruins not far away. Avengers, it's time to rally. Urgently recalled Black Widow Natasha Romanoff, who was on a mission, and went to Calcutta, India to recruit Green Titan Bruce Banner. At the same time, he notified Captain America Steve Rogers, who had just been unfrozen not long ago. Well, this guy doesn't need to say much, after all, he was originally a member of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Avengers must have his seat. As for Iron Man Tony Stark, it is by Phil Coulson. The efficiency of S.H.I.E.L.D. is quite fast. Just a few days later. On an aircraft carrier. Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff collection. I think I should leave quickly. Natasha Romanoff looked at the two unusual men in front of her and shrugged. I won't be able to breathe later. Is this still a submarine? There's a hint of self-deprecation in Bruce Banner's words. Looks like I'm going to be locked in a glass case. Unfortunately, it was different from what he thought. This aircraft carrier raised two total 4 drone-like wings from the left and right respectively, and took off directly from the sea in a straight line. Oh, Bruce Banner froze. This is worse. The agents next to them put on their oxygen masks one after another, and entered the ship, whether it was an aircraft carrier or an airplane. Aircraft carrier, in the exclusive office of the Avengers. Hi Ren. Nick Fury held out his hand. You are welcome. Thank you for your kind invitation. Bruce Banner shook hands with Nick Fury and asked, so, how long are you going to keep me? As long as you find the Tesseract, you can go wherever you want. Nick Fury laughed. In this regard, Bruce Banner nodded and said yes. Steve also came over at this time, and handed Nick Fury a 10-meter bill. This is the bet he made with Nick Fury before, and now it's clear who wins and who loses. Nick Fury smiled silently and put the money in his pocket. Sir, Stark's got it, if nothing else. At this time, Phil Coulson, who had just arranged various matters in the ship, came to Nick Fury and glanced at the few people nearby. As a die-hard fan of Captain America, he focused on Captain America and nodded to Captain America, without the slightest intention to hide, and then said to Nick Fury, what should we do next? This is also an attitude. Nick Fury wants to express it through Phil Coulson. It probably means that since you have joined the formed team, even if it is only temporarily, they will not hide anything, just do it at ease up. Nick Fury put his hands behind his back, squinted his one eye, and looked around at the few people in front of him. Shaking his head slightly, not enough, it's not enough. Just to be on the safe side, there's still one left. It's just that the appearance fee for this one may be more expensive. I'm not sure if I can get it. At the end, a wry smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He had just tricked someone with his front foot, and wanted to invite him out of the mountain with his back foot. If he didn't get cheated hard, he wouldn't believe it. Natasha Romanoff seemed to think of something. Her brows were slightly frowned, and her tone was slightly hesitant. Are you sure you want to find him? Okay. Nick Fury nodded slightly, and a gleam flashed in his eyes. This is a global war, there can be no mistakes, and I will do my best at all costs. The vague attitude of the two aroused the curiosity of Steve Rogers and Bruce Banner. Especially for that person, in the two populations. Su Zicheng played with Jiali for several days. Su Zicheng didn't know anything about what happened during this period of time. After all, some of SHIELD's bases are very secretive. Even if they are blown up, not many people will know about them, and those who know are even less likely to spread the word, so New York is actually still the same as before, and there is no such thing as being about to be invaded by aliens. Battle color. Definitely, the most important thing is that he is in the state of, keep his ears off the window, during the rest time. Anyway, I don't accept the task, so how you do it is none of my business. When I was about to leave the mountain, I received a call. Mr. Su, it's Phil Coulson on the phone. Phil Coulson. Su Zicheng was slightly taken aback, and said with a light smile, if you have a task, just say it, if you don't have a task, goodbye. Definitely yes, definitely yes. Phil Coulson was ashamed. Some things happened in 243 recently, so I want to hire you to catch a district. Who? Loki. It is said that he is a person from God's domain. Loki. Su Zicheng narrowed his eyes slightly. It seems that the plot has developed to the level of Avengers Alliance. Tesseract has been stolen, and now come to find yourself to throw Rocky. Employment amount, he said lightly. Billion USD. Phil Coulson wiped his brow with cold sweat, said. A billion. A sneer curled up at the corner of Su Zicheng's mouth. Phil Coulson agent, let your immediate boss come and talk to me. A few days ago, I just lured Thor and other idiots to trick me. Now I want to catch Loki as a god, and spend $1 billion to get it done. What are you dreaming of? This. Just as Phil Coulson was about to say something, there was some movement on the other end of the phone, and another person changed. I'm right here, Nick Fury said. Nick Fury. Su Zicheng squinted his eyes and smiled falsely. I seem to have been attacked by unknown people some time ago, and one of them claimed, oh no, it was Thor, and he transformed himself. Do you think the mercenary should be promoted this time? $1.5 billion. No problem. Nick Fury was not silent, nodded. $2 billion. Su Zicheng raised the price again. No problem. This time Nick Fury was silent for a while, but finally nodded. Readily. Su Zicheng laughed suddenly. $2.5 billion. Kr. Nick Fury suppressed the anger in his heart, and said calmly, most of our funds have already been invested in another project, $2.5 billion, and we really can't get it out. Can't get it out? Are you kidding me? Su Zicheng sneered. Okay, then $3 billion, no credit, give me an answer before evening, otherwise, you will bear the consequences. After speaking, he hung up the phone directly. He was worrying about how to trick Nick Fury. Now Nick Fury called himself, isn't he looking for a trap? As for the last sentence, yes, the threat is clear. As long as Nick Fury doesn't want to add another bounty hunter to his enemies list, he'll have to secure the money. Nick Fury originally cheated Su Zicheng and was wronged. Although he has a thick skin and may not care about being teased. But now this situation is not a question of whether to fight or not. First came Loki from God's domain, and then the bounty hunter. Both of them are of the same magnitude. If they both become enemies, not to mention whether they will fight, but only enemies, the pressure of their shield is not ordinary the general doubling, but the upward increase of the geometric number. This money must be given, or not given. Therefore, Su Zicheng had the confidence to add another $500 million at the end. Nick Fury listened to the blind tone on the phone with a dark face. It took a long time to put down the phone. As Su Zicheng predicted, Nick Fury didn't dare to gamble. If it was before, he might have thought of not giving money, but now. Forget it. Loki from God's domain is staring at the earth. How deadly does he, Nick Fury, have to be to make a mistake at this juncture? Ah, Nick Fury was frowning, and his dark face darkened again. If he could have predicted today's situation, he shouldn't have been so clever back then. Just because of a little cleverness, the transaction that could have been done with 1 billion yuan became 3 billion yuan, from more than 7 billion soft sister coins to more than 20 billion soft sister coins. Isn't it 3 billion? Nick Fury gritted his teeth. SHIELD currently only has more than 1 billion funds available for use, and the rest cannot be moved no matter what. If there is a slight problem with a giant like SHIELD, it will collapse. There is no comparison with Tony. After all, Tony is his own company. He can play as he wants. How about Nick Fury? He is the director, and he has real power, but many opinions need to be approved by the upper management. I will also be stinked by the top. So, there is only one last way left. Go to a video conference now. Although Nick Fury doesn't want to face those bullshit honest customers anyway, but there is no way to do it. The United States is a capitalist country, who can be an honest customer, which family is not rich. It's not as good as Tony's richest man, but it's okay for a few people to spend 2 billion. It depends on what to use in exchange and persuasion. Definitely, it is inevitable to be complained in the end. At dusk, Su Zicheng glanced at Jiali, rubbed the little girl's head, and said, I have something to go out for a few days, so you can stay at home and watch TV and play games, okay? Gali pouted. I'm going too. What are you going to do? Su Zicheng rolled his eyes. Good boy, I'll be back soon, just to catch someone. Once Jiali leaves, won't everything be settled? At that time, how can he continue to make money? Besides, I, Su Zicheng, am not a man who eats soft food. Jia Liqiang is her business, not mine. Su Zicheng hummed in his heart. Quote. Seeing this, Jiali had no choice but to reluctantly nod her head. The little guy is just a little boring and likes to be a follower, but sometimes he is very sensible. Well, it's still a bit weird to call a Gali who doesn't know how much hail is a little guy. After Su Zicheng comforted a wave of little Jiali. I got a call from Nick Fury. How about it? Although Su Zicheng was asking, his tone was very schadenfreude. Nailed it. Nick Fury's tone was stiff, and he seemed not in a good mood. 3 billion, after capturing Loki, I will call into your account. Ha 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 ha. Su Zicheng didn't feel offended by the tone at all, but felt comfortable all over. Because the tougher Nick Fury's tone was, the worse he was trained, that is, the worse he was pitted by Su Zicheng. It's too late for him to be happy, how could he feel offended? Have Natasha Romanoff come pick me up from my house. Su Zicheng suppressed his heart and laughed wildly. I will help you catch people tonight. Beep beep. Listening to the blind voice on the phone, Nick Fury sighed. Tonight. It would be great if I could catch it tonight. The 300 million spent is not a loss. However, it still hurts to think about it. After all, Su Zicheng was short of shouting the word robbery on his neck with a knife holder. If I had known earlier, I shouldn't have played that clever trick. Natasha Romanoff, go to New York, Queens. After Su Zicheng hung up the phone, he found that there was an extra task in the system, which was a task belonging to 3 billion. In fact, to be honest, the hiring fee for this task of catching Loki is at most 2 billion within the range determined by the system, and if there is more, the task will not count. However, the bounty hunter system is still very user-friendly, and Su Zicheng pits Nick Fury by default. It was detected that Nick Fury cheated Su Zicheng before, which in turn made Su Zicheng cheat Nick Fury, and it is not unreasonable. So this 1 billion task is officially entered into the system. Head off. Su Zicheng once again put on the hunter suit that has not been seen for a long time, with the bow of elements on his back. Glancing at his pitiful 4.8 million balance, he sighed sadly. After careful calculation, there are actually more than 10 days without improving strength, and the balance is only 4.8 million. This 4.8 million may be a lot to him before, but now, his whole body is full of LV.3 and IV.4 skills, so 4.8 million is just a drop in the bucket. But thinking of the 3 billion bounty, he soon cheered up again, staring extremely hotly. Tonight, I will make my purse bulge. I still have to grow fat. After Su Zicheng hung up the phone, he headed for his hometown in Queens. The place Su Zicheng released, the widow's sister Natasha Romanoff must have gone to pick her up nearby. However, his speed is not very fast, but advances at a constant speed. Natasha Romanoff needs time even if he launches a fighter plane. According to Su Zicheng's calculation, if he goes at his own speed, when he arrives, Natasha Romanoff should also arrive. Sure enough, just as he expected, a stealth fighter plane that can only be seen with the naked eye is floating in a deep mountain not far from Su Zicheng's hometown in Queens. The telepathy came out through the body. In the driver's seat is Natasha Romanoff. After all, Natasha Romanoff is a level 10 agent, so it is not a big problem to fly a fighter. Hey, Agent Romanoff. Su Zicheng stood under the fighter plane, using the ability of mind control to invade Natasha Romanoff's mind, and said. The sudden sound startled Natasha Romanoff. But he soon breathed a sigh of relief. I really don't understand why you have so many scary abilities. Natasha Romanoff slowly landed the fighter plane, pressed the button to open the cabin, and said with emotion, obviously each one is very powerful when taken out, but it is condensed on one person. Oh, Su Zicheng got on the fighter plane and shrugged, maybe I'm more handsome. Yes, Natasha Romanoff seemed to be relaxed, but she was nervous and said, why are you wearing a hood? Quote. Relax, am I that scary? Su Zicheng spread his hands, smiled evilly and said, maybe you can see my face when I take a shower. He has pitted Nick Fury for billions. He is in a good mood now and does not suggest fighting with Natasha Romanoff. The corner of Natasha Romanoff's mouth twitched. Not going to continue this topic. I got you. Where are we going next? Okay. Su Zicheng stroked his chin. Take a rest for the night and tell you tomorrow. He actually knew where Loki would go. According to the current timeline, if there are no accidents, Loki will appear in Stuttgart, Germany tomorrow, and Barton will take this opportunity to secretly sneak into Shia's laboratory to steal things. This spot came out a bit when I was watching a movie. Roughly calculated, the time difference between the United States and Germany is about 6 hours. You can leave tomorrow afternoon. When you arrive in Germany, it should be 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. Loki must be there at that time. He didn't even bother to track down the paper cranes. Well, bullshit. To be on the safe side, Su Zicheng still planned to use a chasing paper crane. Wait for me all night, don't bother me. Su Zicheng took out the tracking paper crane, and the whole person devoted himself to tracking the paper crane, thinking of Loki in his heart. Soon, track paper cranes activate. Start tracking Loki. The speed of tracking paper cranes is not slow, but it is definitely not fast. If Loki is really in Germany now, then the flight time needed to track the origami crane is about 1 night. Looked at Su Zicheng as if he really slept on the fighter plane. Natasha Romanoff sighed helplessly, and switched the fighter to Nick Fury's channel. Natasha Romanoff, how's it going? Nick Fury has been here too, asked. People received it. Natasha Romanoff glanced at Su Zicheng, who was leaning on the fighter plane without any movement, but he said he would give him 1 night, don't disturb him, and fell asleep on the fighter plane. Come back to S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury was silent for a long time, and said, don't touch him, do what he says. Sleep over. He definitely didn't think that Su Zicheng could fall asleep so simply. Judging from the ability shown by Su Zicheng in recent missions, he may still have the ability to find people. Otherwise, how would he know where Mjolnir is? And how did he find that hapless guy from the Rand group? I'm afraid this night is the time to look for Loki, and the results may come out tomorrow. As for taking the opportunity to kill Su Zicheng, he definitely thought about it, but just dismissed it after a moment. He would think of it, wouldn't Su Zicheng? Not to mention that this guy's missiles can't break the defense, how to kill him. So, in the end Nick Fury still decided to wait the whole night and wait for Su Zicheng to wake up. Although Su Zicheng obviously backhanded and forgot about the bragging just now. But Su Zicheng said that he did it for S.H.I.E.L.D. After all, this is to ensure that Loki can be found and captured safely, otherwise, he can go directly to Germany. As to whether he will be found, then there is no guarantee. Funny. Natasha Romanoff returned to the S.H.I.E.L.D. base in the fighter plane. Su Zicheng, on the other hand, sat firmly on the spot, motionless. Natasha Romanoff, is this the guy Nick Fury sent here for? Steve Rogers squinted his eyes. Is it reliable? Natasha Romanoff nodded. Bruce should have seen how good he is. This guy. Bruce Banner looked at Su Zicheng from afar, with a glint of darkness in his eyes. Feel sorry. He covered his head and quickly suppressed the tyrannical and warlike emotions in his heart. Definitely, it wasn't an emotion he originally had, but a Green Titan Hulk's. After all, he had personally witnessed the scene where Su Zicheng fought Hulk's great enemy, Abomination, and hung up the Abomination to fight. But at that time Hulk was sleeping, not face to face. But seeing Su Zicheng in a waking state now, he couldn't help it, which naturally aroused Hulk's belligerence and anger again, wishing he could get out of Bruce Banner's body and fight Su Zicheng now. No way, Hulk is so simple and brainless, he is not as smart as Bruce Banner. Today's Hulk is just a mighty beast. In its view, Su Zicheng snatched its prey, killed his prey, that's right, killed its prey, not helped it kill its prey. It's not a word, meaning across the sea. Fortunately, Bruce Banner cultivated himself during this period of time, so he was able to suppress this anger forcibly. Oh, things don't look right. Natasha Romanoff once saw the scene where Bruce Banner turned into Hulk, and that was it, and it gave me a headache. The two things she fears the most come together. As for Captain America Steve Rogers, he was confused because he was still in the ice when Su Zicheng was raging in New York. Let's rest for the night first. Natasha Romanoff shook her head and left the place. 10 o'clock the next morning. Su Zicheng, who had been sitting there all night without moving, moved. He slowly raised his head and looked at the surveillance camera not far away. Nick Fury, now head to Stuttgart, Germany. Su Zicheng's spiritual power last night was spent in tracking the paper cranes. As he expected, he tracked the paper cranes all the way, crossed several borders, and entered Stuttgart, Germany. It is also the place in the movie where the party is held and Loki is bubbling. Nick Fury, who has been staring at the monitor, said he received it, and looked at Steve Rogers, who was already on standby, the captain. It's obvious what he means. Steve Rogers nodded, wearing a star-striped uniform and a shield, and joined Natasha Romanoff in the jet. The fighter jets took off quickly. Looking at the back of the fighter plane, Nick Fury said to the Hill agent behind him, "The satellite search system focuses on Stuttgart, Germany, and if there is any discovery, let us know immediately. In addition, it is necessary to notify the Shield in Germany, arrange the entry procedures, and give Natasha Romanoff and others a green light all the way. Otherwise, the fighter plane is easily taken down." This time Natasha Romanoff is still in charge of an agent whose name is not known with her next to the driver's seat. There are only 4 people on the fighter plane. Su Zicheng, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and that unknown agent. Su Zicheng was still sitting steadily on his seat with half-closed eyes, using his telepathic ability to silently observe Captain America. Pretty much what he thought. Captain America's physical fitness is not strong, probably around 10, and the super soldier serum is like that. But it doesn't matter, after all, Captain America is a bug, and its physical fitness is obviously lower than that of superheroes' supervillains, but it is hard to rely on Vibranium Shield and they can make a 50-50 split. Moreover, Captain America's shield also comes with a buff that attracts hatred. Such a mortal who is afraid of guns, when fighting against him, the villain can kick but refuses to fight, and greets the shield frantically. And when Su Zicheng was observing Captain America, Steve Rogers was also quietly watching him. For some reason, Steve Rogers instinctively felt that Su Zicheng was not a good person. Steve Rogers didn't like his temperament very much, and he always felt that he was plotting something wrong. Maybe it's because Su Zicheng is a bounty hunter who hides in the shadows, and Steve Rogers is the positive figure of Wei Guangzhong. Oh, maybe not both. Steve Rogers' instincts are still spot on. After all, Su Zicheng is really trying to plot something wrong. From the United States to Germany, it takes about 7 hours for a civil aviation plane, but after all, it is a fighter plane produced by SHIELD, and the road is unimpeded, so the speed is naturally much faster than that of a civil aviation plane. It only takes about 4 hours to get there. Definitely, this is all approximate. If you want to calculate the time from New York to Stuttgart accurately, you can't calculate it. In short, it will not be too bad, and it will not exceed 1 hour. They set off at 10 a.m. the United States time. After arriving in Stuttgart, it should be around 2 p.m., plus the time difference between the United States and Germany. After arriving in Germany, the local time should be 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock. Jiao Wang Jiao. Just the beginning of the evening in Stuttgart. 1:30 p.m. the United States time. 7:30 p.m. German time. There is only half an hour left before Su Zicheng and others arrive in Germany. In the SHIELD base, Nick Fury and Bruce Banner sit in the command center, keeping an eye on places around the world where Loki may appear. Quote. Sir. At this time, Hill, who was in charge of keeping an eye on Stuttgart, suddenly came to Nick Fury. "I found Loki." "Where?" Nick Fury put his hands behind his back and hurriedly followed behind you. Hill glanced at the impact captured by the satellite on the computer and the roadside camera, glanced at Nick Fury, and said deeply, "It's in Stuttgart, Germany, the scene of the party that will start soon." Same as Sue said. Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief. But at the same time, he felt inexplicably strange. Why did this Loki suddenly appear? Loki didn't even hide. Could it be that they SHIELD originally were able to find him at this time, but they were tricked by Su Zicheng? If Su Zicheng read this idea, he would probably die of laughter on the spot. Because the black marinated egg is right. Loki appeared to attract all the attention of people like SHIELD and Nick Fury, just to seduce them. How could he still hide? He just showed up in Stuttgart on purpose. just to tell S.H.I.E.L.D., I, Loki, am here, come and catch me. If there is no Su Zicheng, he will still be arrested, because this is part of his plan. He was in charge of getting the attention of S.H.I.E.L.D., and Hawkeye Barton was in charge of stealing metal bowls at the Shea Institute of Physics next door. As for Su Zicheng, he definitely knows that Loki is just a decoy. But does it have anything to do with him? Su Zicheng said that his task is only to catch Loki, and he has no obligation to arrange the next thing. He is just a little butterfly in the Marvel world who uses his foresight of the plot to make money. Stuttgart. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the party officially began. The melodious violin sounded, and the upper-class people were wearing dresses and suits, holding champagne and red wine in their hands, discussing the content of tonight's party, and the atmosphere was very harmonious. But what they don't know is that under this harmonious atmosphere, there is an arm wrestling between two powerful organizations. It is not an exaggeration to say that the undercurrent is surging. If you are not careful, you will be swept into pieces, not even slag left. Soon, this harmonious atmosphere was immediately broken. Loki broke into the party wearing a suit. They also hijacked a boss and used a triangular device to copy his face, while Barton on the other side accepted it simultaneously and opened the door of the institute. Looking at the terrified mortal in front of him, Loki held the scepter in his hand, and the golden light gradually bloomed on his body. After a flash of golden light, the suit quickly turned into Loki's divine costume, with two big horns peeking out like unicorns on his head, wearing a green cloak, and looking extremely arrogant. All these upper-class guys in suits and ties were forced into a small park outside the building. Boom! With a wave of the scepter, a speeding taxi was blown away. Kneel down. Loki's indifferent voice echoed throughout the room. But everyone present is a respectable person, how could they really kneel down because of Loki's words? They still want to escape. However, the crowd didn't escape a few steps before there was an extra Loki in the path ahead of them. Kneel down, kneel down, kneel down. A total of 4 Loki duplications stand at the 4 corners of the park, forming a square. I said. Loki's real body slowly walked out a few steps, and the scepter slammed the ground hard, roaring, immediately, kneel down. The 4 duplication scepters shine with strange light. This scene immediately frightened the crowd enough. After the first person knelt down, they all knelt down one after another. Looking at the terrified faces of the crowd, Loki couldn't help but smile. He opened his arms, as if he saw the time when one person was below 10,000 after the successful invasion of the Earth. Isn't that simple? Isn't that what you were born to do? This is the unspoken truth of human beings. The lure of freedom robs you of the joy of life. You are crazily pursuing power and status, but in fact you are full of servility in your bones, and sooner or later you will succumb to your rulers. The more he said, the bigger the smile on Loki's face became. Looking at these people kneeling on the ground, he thought to himself, isn't this what I want? Power. Endless power. However, at CIAD this time, a white-haired old man stood up. Although his body was hunched over, he looked straight at Loki without fear. But not to someone like you. It has to be said that if the old man doesn't speak, he will act, but once he speaks, he will be astonishing. The other kneeling people looked at the old man with a hint of admiration in their surprised eyes. Because what the old man said was exactly what they wanted to say but were afraid to say. I am unique. Loki's smile faded away. There are too many shameless people like you. The old man mocked ruthlessly. If you are talking about dressing up, then I think it may really be unique. Loki laughs again. He slowly raised the scepter in his hand. Look at this old guy. As he spoke, he slowly aimed the scepter at the old man, and a wave of azure blue energy quickly condensed. He is your role model. The old man's expression changed slightly. Although this situation was expected when I stood up. But in the face of death, it is inevitable that a trace of emotion called fear will arise. The energy cannon was condensed and shot out almost instantly. Just at the moment, suddenly a circular star-striped shield flew out of midair. Just blocked the energy cannon in the middle, and stuck it on the ground with undiminished power. And bounced it back to Loki. Unexpectedly, such a sudden event, Loki was caught off guard and was directly hit by the energy cannon, and he lay on the ground in a state of embarrassment. Exclamation mark. Next moment, only 2 figures fell to the ground. One was wearing a black windbreaker, holding a bow and arrow, and the other was wearing a star-striped tights, which set off the large muscles on his body with great impact. The two were Su Zicheng and Captain America Steve Rogers, who had just arrived. "Sorry, I snatched your shield just now in an emergency." Su Zicheng shrugged to Steve Rogers beside him. The shield was not thrown by Steve Rogers just now, but he, Su Zicheng, directly snatched it and threw it from the fighter plane, blocking the energy cannon for the old man. "Fine." Steve Rogers shook his head. As the great and upright Captain America, he naturally doesn't care about these small things. As long as he can save people, it's okay. Exhaling a breath, he squatted down and pulled out the shield that was half stuck in the concrete floor with great difficulty, and looked at Loki. Su Zicheng possessed mind-reading skills, so naturally seeing that Steve Rogers had read all his thoughts, he chuckled, and slowly pulled the bow of the elements away, and the bow and arrow slowly condensed, aiming at Loki. "Moose boy, your speech is over. Elemental bows and arrows condense." Loki, who was beaten to the ground, had already reacted, because this was exactly what he wanted. It's just that he was a little caught off guard by being hit by the energy cannon. But also harmless. Ordinary people would probably die suddenly if they were hit by an energy cannon, but Loki is different. He is a Protoss from Asgard, and his physical fitness is many times stronger than ordinary people. Coupled with the equipment on his body, Loki actually only suffered from the impact, but the real damage was not much. "It's a soldier." Loki raised his head suddenly, looked at Su Zicheng and Captain America in front, and suddenly showed a smile on his face. There is also a bounty hunter who likes money. He was not surprised at the arrival of Su Zicheng in his heart. Because Loki made preparations for 460 before invading the Earth, many people can hardly imagine, even Su Zicheng has considered it. Although Su Zicheng is very powerful, Loki is not afraid at all. Because he is God. "Soldier, you're out of date." "I'm afraid it's not me who is obsolete," Steve Rogers replied, but found that Loki was not paying attention to him at all. After leaving a sentence, he looked at Su Zicheng. With a persuasive expression on his face, you lost his way towards Su Zicheng. "Bounty hunters, what are they made for?" "Money," Loki said as he walked, his tone full of temptation. "I can give you money, endless money. Hundreds of billions, trillions. This is nothing but the money of the mortal world. I can make you the money of the universe forever, and become a unique bounty hunter. You don't even need to follow me, I'll give you endless money. Look, this outdated old soldier next to him, as long as you kill him. I will let you have what you want." Loki is clever and cunning, both good and evil. In Norse mythology, he is the god of trickery. Compared with Thor, Loki's strength is not very strong, but he can dig out the deepest desires in the hearts of people around him with a single word. If you add scepter, Loki had already quietly walked to Su Zicheng's side, and immediately aimed the scepter at his chest. But Su Zicheng stood there blankly holding the elemental bow that condensed the bow and arrow, as if he had really been hypnotic ability, and was struggling in his heart whether to agree to Loki. Captain America Steve Rogers panicked and hurried forward to stop Loki. Unfortunately, in front of Loki, Steve Rogers seemed to have lost his 50-50 strength, and was beaten to the ground by Loki a few times. After all, Captain America is just the pinnacle of human beings, and it's just a 50-50 split in the movie. In front of Loki, a kind of intelligent god who doesn't rely on his physique to make a living, he can't please him. If it weren't for the shield, he would have died a long time ago. Born unequal, the pinnacle of human beings is just the starting point of their god race. After knocking Steve Rogers down, Luigi looked at Su Zicheng again. Compared to Steve Rogers, an old-fashioned and not very strong veteran, Loki values Su Zicheng more. He had seen the scene of Su Zicheng fighting the abomination. This kind of thing is hard for him to achieve. However, as a noble god, Loki doesn't feel that his strength is above everything else. In his opinion, he is a noble god, and the guy in front of him is just an ordinary person with weaker strength. As long as they are ordinary people, they have desires and can be controlled by themselves. In addition, his scepter has gradually moved in front of Su Zicheng. Even if the other party does not answer, he can still control it, just like controlling Hawkeye and Dr. Hillwig. Pity, his little calculation was wrong. Su Zicheng used mind-reading skills to read the thoughts in Loki's mind in detail. I am God. Noble gods. Foolish mortals. The second illness is very serious, little Loki. There was no fluctuation in his heart, and he almost couldn't help laughing out loud. As the god of intrigue, Loki is really terrifying in terms of arousing people's desires. Unfortunately, that is for ordinary people. Su Zicheng's mental strength has long been strengthened to a peak by the ability controlled by the mind, and he is not affected by Loki at all. Loki's tricks are so stupid. Su Zicheng is not really the kind of guy who can't walk when he sees money. And the seduction is not the point, the money he likes is not that kind of money. It's like people like grapefruit, but Loki drew an orange to seduce him. It makes people laugh. See, Su Zicheng has been silent. Loki moved the scepter slowly, still. Just when the scepter was only 1 centimeter away from Su Zicheng's chest. You elk boy is kind of funny. The voice fell. The elemental arrows condensed by the elemental bow pierced through the air with a whoosh. With a flickering arc, it hit Loki hard in the chest. Loki was knocked into the air, and immediately, as if he had been electrocuted, he twitched on the ground, and from time to time, a terrifying electric current flashed across his body, and the arc flickered. The sudden attack halved Loki's combat strength, and the divine costume on his body was also slowly disappearing. Lying on the ground, rolling his eyes, and twitching from time to time. Don't you hurry up. Su Zicheng looked around at the lively crowd, and let out a helpless roar. It's okay to watch the excitement, but it's stupid to watch the excitement desperately. The surrounding crowd immediately realized, oh my god, this is a fight between gods, screamed, and all fled the scene within a few seconds, running to nothing. Only Steve Rogers, who had just stood up, was left clutching his chest with pain on his face. It was really painful from being hit by Loki just now. Seeing this, Natasha Romanoff, who was in the air, immediately prepared to land the fighter plane to receive Loki, the prisoner. Yet at the moment, the screen in front of her suddenly flickered, and finally directly indicated that the control right was taken away. Immediately afterwards, a familiar voice came from her. Hey, Agent Romanov, how are you? Natasha Romanoff breathed a sigh of relief, looked at Su Zicheng below, and suddenly felt a sense of playfulness. Mr. Stark, I'm afraid you are late. Tony, who didn't know what was going on, smiled. I don't think I will be late. It is as impossible for the chief soldier to deal with that elk kid, just as it is impossible for me to eat the apple pie made by the grandma next door. Boom. Dragging 2 extremely long tails, with a bang, Iron Man Tony Stark among the red Baixiang appeared on the stage. Soldiers. It landed on the ground with a bang, the guns in the palm of the hand were condensed, and all kinds of weapons such as small missiles and small machine guns on the arms were ready and aimed at Su Zicheng. Su Zicheng turned around and frowned at Tony. Oh. Tony coughed dryly, and immediately retracted the weapon in embarrassment, looked at Loki, who was sprawled on the ground and twitched from time to time, and the corner of his mouth twitched. I seem to be really late. Yes, you are really late, Mr. Stark. At this time, Natasha Romanoff, who was controlling the landing of the fighter plane, added. Shet, you don't need to repeat this, Agent Romanov. Tony rolled his eyes and looked at Su Zicheng in front of him, looking like he hadn't seen his good brother for a long time. If it was said earlier on that Mr. Hunter was there, I wouldn't use it. Do you people look down on Mr. Hunter's ability? Quote. Tony was really blowing. Su Zicheng rolled his eyes again and again. Does this guy have some conspiracy waiting for him? Mr. Stark, Mr. Su was only invited by us, not an Avenger. Natasha Romanoff, who got off the plane, reminded. Hired. She dared not say that. Or it would be better to invite them over. Oh, I got it. Tony nodded suddenly, and asked Loki, who was lying on the ground secretly, what about this guy? Take the fighter plane. Steve Rogers said. We need to bring him back to the command center. Okay. Tony nodded, looking very emotional. It seems that your head hasn't rusted after being frozen for so long. Being stunned suddenly, Steve glanced helplessly at Tony, but finally said nothing. Tony was his old friend's heir, after all. Su Zicheng didn't get involved. After Avengers, the 2 leading figures are now starting to fight. This is something that can't be helped. As for Natasha Romanoff, it's the same. Anyway, she has lived for many years. She has been an agent in S.H.I.E.L.D. It is estimated that she is older than Su Zicheng. She naturally knows some secrets that ordinary people do not know. She also knows the problems between Tony and Steve Rogers, so she did not force her to persuade her. They can do whatever they like, as long as they don't fight. Su Zicheng picked up Loki, who was still twitching on the ground, threw him on the fighter plane, and tightly handcuffed it around the fighter plane with special handcuffs and neck cuffs. These are all specially made and used to deal with extraordinary people. If it is not a fighting god like Thor but Loki, it will be really difficult to escape. Tony and Steve Rogers got on the fighter plane one after another, while Natasha Romanoff started driving. The fighter plane takes off. After a moment of relief, Loki has gradually recovered, but he didn't say anything, just looked at the three people in front of him jokingly. Su Zicheng definitely knew why Loki was joking, but he didn't care. Mr. Hunter. Suddenly, Tony seemed to remember something, and looked at Su Zicheng with resentful eyes. What's up? It gave Su Zicheng a chill. Goosebumps popped up, and the whole body trembled. Where did you get your new energy source? Tony looked complicated. I'm messing around. Su Zicheng now understood what Tony was going to say. It should be that S.H.I.E.L.D. gave him his father's belongings some time ago, right? I thought it was something super good, or another new energy source. As a result, I immediately found that it was exactly the same as the new energy Genichi given by Su Zicheng. Tony was stunned for a moment. For a moment, I couldn't figure out whether this new energy source was found by Howard, or by Su Zicheng. Did I get tricked by Su Zicheng? Su Zicheng read Tony's current thoughts in his heart, and sighed in his heart, yes, it's just cheating you. Mr. Hunter, you should know that the new energy you took out is the same as the relic left by my father. Tony asked. Do not know. Su Zicheng shook his head. This kind of thing can never be admitted. Tony gave Su Zicheng a complicated look. If he doesn't know, he really doesn't believe it, at least he trusts his father more. Although he knew that Mr. Hunter was not a good person, it was still a bit uncomfortable to be tricked so quietly. But, forget it. Anyway, he can't afford to offend the bounty hunter in front of him for the time being. If you are cheated, you will be cheated, and it is only 100 million meters. Now if you make him anxious, if you receive a mission to hunt and kill yourself next time, wouldn't you just do it right away? It's not bad that Tony is arrogant, but he has also seen Su Zicheng show off his power, and that kind of strength is absolutely beyond his current reach. He will not complain about himself and degenerate from then on. After all, it's just that he can't reach it at the moment. Tony is a genius. How long did it take him to research the Mark War 303 armor? I believe he will reach that level of strength soon. Definitely, apart from that, he will not still maintain that arrogance that is not afraid of anything. Sometimes, people need to know how to adapt. Su Zicheng's mind-reading ability was still on, once again reading all of Tony's thoughts into his mind. Nodded appreciatively. Smart man, worthy of Tony Stark. That's it. There was silence on the fighter plane. Boom. However, the good times didn't last long. When the fighter plane passed a dark cloud quietly appeared there. Boom. Thunder and lightning roared. In the face of such a terrifying force of nature, the fighter plane seems so inferior. What's the situation? Why is there thunder and lightning? Natasha Romanoff, who was driving the fighter plane, frowned slightly. As a fighter pilot, she knew clearly that there was no sign of thunder ahead. Lightning out of thin air. Loki, who had been silent all this time, was suddenly shocked, his eyes showing horror. What, are you afraid of thunder? Asked Steve Rogers from the sidelines. Do not. A mocking smile curled up on Loki's mouth. I'm the one who's afraid of thunder. A burst of extremely fast roar sounded. Boom. Pong. When everyone just reacted, the whole fighter plane shook violently, and everyone present felt that a person was stepped on the top of the fighter plane. Tony decisively picked up the mask on the side, and then opened the cabin. Ben was going to fly up immediately to see who it was. Only to find that the man landed directly on the tail of the cabin. The person with blonde hair flutters, wears armor and a red cloak, holds Mjolnir in his hand, and can summon thunder and lightning. Who is it not Thor? Natasha Romanoff, who had been keeping an eye on the rear, suddenly thought something was wrong. Natasha Romanoff also knows what happened in S.H.I.E.L.D. some time ago, including this proud Thor. At present, Thor has not experienced the emotions that truly belong to human beings. He still does his own way, even if he knows how to sacrifice for others, his arrogance is still unattainable by ordinary people. This kind of personality meets Tony, who is equally arrogant. If there is no running in period, oh no, even if there is a running in period, some sparks are bound to be sparked. The moment Tony saw Thor, the palm cannon in his hand was already condensed, trying to block him. And Thor is also a person who doesn't talk too much, he doesn't say a word of nonsense. Picking up the hammer is like giving Tony a blow. Su Zicheng on the side moved, he dodged between the two of them, grabbed Mjolnir with his left hand, and directly wiped out Tony's palm cannon with his right hand. His whole body shook slightly, looking left and right. Be more harmonious, can't you sit down and talk? Su Zicheng said earnestly. He's getting old all of a sudden. This is definitely impossible. It is impossible to be a good person in this life, other things are just clouds, only money is the most fragrant. So why the sudden move? In fact, the reason is very simple, nothing more than not wanting them to fight. Because if Thor's hammer is solid, then the final result will be that neither of them will accept it, and it will eventually turn into a fight. After all, Tony is not a vegetarian, he will endure everything. How long are these two guys going to fight? A Thor, an Iron Man, neither of them weak, fighting endless rhythm, delaying the plane time, delaying the speed of transporting Loki. Wouldn't it be nice to sit down and have a good talk? Firstly, it won't delay the plane time, and secondly, it won't hurt the flowers and plants. What a wonderful thing. Why can't these two guys figure it out? He is still in a hurry to go back to collect the stock commission. After receiving the commission, he will go home to accompany Jiali. Who the hell is free to spend time with you here? It's you. Thor now remembered Su Zicheng. It's hard not to remember. That period was the most difficult time in his life. He kept it in his heart to alert himself all the time, among which Su Zicheng and Jiali appeared in his memory as still fresh in his memory. It's really shameful for a dignified Thor to be turned around to vomit. At the same time, I was slightly surprised in my heart. Although he didn't use all his strength for the hammer just now, seeing how Su Zicheng received the hammer with ease, it was obvious that he didn't use all his strength. Did not expect. I thought Jiali was the coolest, but I didn't expect that the guy next to Jiali in a hooded trench coat was so badass. This guy just showed up all of a sudden. Tony noticed that the palm cannon hit Su Zicheng's palm, but he didn't hurt him at all. His pupils shrank slightly, and he said, I'm afraid they came to snatch Loki. Whether it is snatched or killed, the Tesseract will be gone. Can't let him take it away. You don't deserve the Tesseract, and you don't deserve to judge Loki. Thor withdrew his mind, and the two confronted Su Zicheng's left and right hands like this. Mind your own business, Tin Woodman, Loki will definitely be judged by Asgard. As long as you hand over the Rubik's Cube, you can do whatever you want, but before that. Tony chuckled, it's best not to get in the way. Thor got a little angry, and slowly lowered his head. Thor's power was gathering. Stark, we don't have a battle plan yet. Steve Rogers picked up the shield and wanted to get involved, but found that it seemed difficult for him to get involved in this kind of fairy fight. The battle plan is, Tony's left hand was held by Su Zicheng, and his right hand slowly condensed the palm cannon, ready to fire at any time. Fight. All of a sudden, the atmosphere became extremely tense. Loki sat on the side, watching this scene with interest. It's like watching a play. Thor, he suddenly said, Odin sent you to the earth, didn't it cost a lot of dark energy? Shut up, Thor shouted suddenly, I will teach you a lesson later. Oh, it wasn't you who taught him the lesson. Tony suddenly shook his head funny, it's me. Mortals, Thor cursed secretly, his pupils gradually ignited with lightning. Shut up all of them. Suddenly, an indifferent voice came. Tony only felt that the armor on his left hand was suddenly enveloped by a powerful force. The extremely hard material was directly pinched and twisted, and pressed against its internal parts. Faint electric light flickered on it. He had no doubts at all, as long as he used with a little effort, his left hand would be disabled. Thor is not much worse. He wanted to pull Mjolnir out, but found that if he didn't use Thor's power, it would be like a small human being trying to move a mountain, and he would not move. These two situations made them calm down instantly. As this farce over, Su Zicheng let go of his hand slowly, and the control of Mjolnir in his left hand immediately returned interestingly to Thor and Tony's hands. The two didn't intend to fight this time, they just glared at each other angrily. Su Zicheng nodded in satisfaction, walked to the side of the cabin, and closed the cabin door. Looking at the two people in front of him, he spread his hands together. Isn't this all right? Is there anything we can't sit down and talk about? Thor and Tony sat on both sides. Although they still didn't see each other very well and were wary of each other, they still didn't fight. In this regard, Steve Rogers can only give Su Zicheng a thumbs up. Although he doesn't like the hunter in front of him, he has to say that strength is sometimes more useful than reason, and strength plus reason is simply the rhythm of overthrowing everything. Natasha Romanoff, who had been flying the fighter plane, also heaved a sigh of relief, panting heavily, her chest rising and falling. Natasha Romanoff is really nervous. To say who is most afraid of the two fighting, it is her as the fighter pilot. It would be fine for these two horrible guys to fight outside, but if they really fight inside the fighter plane, the unlucky ones will be the fighter pilot and Captain America Steve Rogers. Which of them is not powerful? It is estimated that the aftermath of the fight can penetrate the fighter plane, falling apart as the best result. Although she, Natasha Romanoff, has lived for 100 years, and her fighting ability is also one of the best. She is a level 10 agent boss of S.H.I.E.L.D., but she has not yet had the physique to survive a fall from a height of tens of thousands of meters. She is neither Tony nor Thor nor Hulk. If it falls apart, Captain America will die suddenly on the spot. Even if there is a shield, the impact of falling from a height of tens of thousands of meters is enough to smash every part of his body into pieces, probably like being shot by a mosquito. It's the same as snapping into pieces of meat. Fortunately, there is Su Zicheng. Su Zicheng suppressed these two guys who were ready to move. They had no choice but to have a serious discussion. Only after such a discussion do we know. Their goals are almost the same, but the process is somewhat different, and they can cooperate completely. Although Thor is very disdainful of cooperation. But the fact is that this guy needs cooperation very much. Except for the two only good friends on Earth, Jane and Dr. Hillwig, Thor is completely unaccompanied and has no brothers. As for Loki, now he is an enemy, maybe he will be stabbed in the back, it doesn't count for the time being. Summer. So, talk again. Plus the mediation of the good guy Steve Rogers. Although the two are still very at odds. But in the end, he temporarily suppressed the impulse to fight in his heart. Su Zicheng glanced at the three sitting quietly in front of him with satisfaction. I find it odd. After mediating between Thor and Tony, Steve Rogers said quietly, leaving Loki aside. What's weird? Thor glances at Captain America. Loki is strong. Steve Rogers CIA said, I don't think he will be caught by us so easily. Loki's strength is stronger than you mortals, but with this bounty hunter around, I'm afraid it won't be particularly difficult to take him down. Thor's IQ can only be said to be not low, but it is definitely not high, and he has not seen the scene when Su Zicheng captured Loki, so he was a little confused for a while. No, that's not what I meant. Steve Rogers shook his head and said, he didn't have the slightest intention of running away, and he didn't use all his strength, as if he was caught by us on purpose. It was the same in Stuttgart, and he appeared swaggeringly eccentric. Tony glanced at Steve Rogers in surprise. As an elderly person, your IQ is very good. How do you maintain it? Much better than this big guy. Thor glanced at Tony, resisting the desire to blow his head off with the hammer. He was getting used to Tony's sharp tongue. Steve Rogers and Tony looked at each other, obviously very helpless with his venomous tongue, but as Wei Guangzheng's protagonist, he didn't want to argue with Tony. Then what can we do now? Thor asked. Just as Steve Rogers was about to speak, he was interrupted by Tony. What else can I do? The man has already been caught, so could it be that he was released because of these things? It's true that the big man has no wisdom. Shet. Thor cursed secretly, the veins on his forehead popped up, obviously enduring the pain. Su Zicheng looked at Thor with pity. It seems that it is still necessary to let the two of them fight to make both parties happy. You two should fight after you get Loki back. He walked up to the two of them, patted their shoulders at the same time, and said, as long as I don't delay my delivery of Loki to the command center, it will be fine. As for what they just discussed, Su Zicheng didn't bother to get involved. Of course he knew Loki was doing it on purpose. And after watching the plot, he also knows that Loki will be rescued soon. Nick Fury's $3 billion would be wasted. But what does that matter? He couldn't be bothered to stop Loki. You know, the task Nick Fury gave him was to catch Loki, and now he has done it, other things have nothing to do with him. Moreover, Su Zicheng's little abacus is crackling. He can actually solve Loki at once. He knows where Hawkeye is. As long as he gets rid of these two people, and then uses paper cranes to find Dr. Hillwig, he can find where Tesseract is, and bring Tesseract over in minutes. Okay. But he wouldn't do that. He is not a fool. With the money to make steamed buns, but why go to help others build a house? What a joke. Now if it is solved once and for all, wouldn't it mean that 3 billion will be enough to settle the battle of the aircraft carrier and the battle with the Chitauri invasion? Wouldn't Su Zicheng be at a loss? Just let the story develop naturally. If nothing else, just Chitauri's invasion, if you want him to solve it, at least start with tens of billions, right? He could have unearthed tens of billions of money in this war, so how could he settle everything after that for 3 billions? It's time to eat. As for the life and death of those who died because of this war, it has nothing to do with him. Su Zicheng didn't want to save the world. Besides, this is what is going to happen. Su Zicheng is just using his foresight of the plot to make some money. As long as the money is spent, fewer people will die, why not do it? Everyone has selfishness. Su Zicheng's selfishness is money. He has set his position from the very beginning, no distinction between good and evil. As long as the money does not touch his bottom line, then he can go all out for money. So I buried these thoughts deeply and didn't show them at all. Let them Avengers guess for themselves. Loki runs away if he wants to. Anyway, the bigger the trouble, the more money he gets from it, the stronger his strength, the stronger the strength, the more money, the stronger his strength. Such a perfect cycle, why break it? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.